Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Danielle Finley Jones. Love is a beautiful emotion that inspires books, music, and movies. However, when love becomes distorted and comes from a troubled person, it can be extremely harmful, destroying lives, careers, and families. Danielle Finley Jones, 31, lives with her family in the Sydney suburb of Calgary, Australia. She works as a teacher and is dedicated to supporting her students. Since she was a child, Danielle has played soccer at a local club, which has become an important part of her life. During her soccer journey, she became the team captain. Over the years, Danielle has earned the respect of club staff and players. Her leadership and management skills have helped guide athletes to success. Danielle is known as a kind, feminine, strong, and intelligent girl. She has become a role model for many. When the Football Association, she is a member of organized a week dedicated to women's football. Danielle became the representative of the event. Danielle faced difficulties when her parents separated. However, these difficulties taught her valuable life lessons. Since she was a child, Danielle has been very close to her mother, with whom she continued to live after her parents divorced. She also has a strong relationship with her brother, Blake. They spend all their free time together, hanging out in bars and occasionally attending parties during the week. Danielle works as a teacher, and on weekends she is active in sports and socializing with friends and family. Danielle has a vibrant social life and is doing well in her career. She prioritizes her career as a teacher and an athlete. Now, she is ready to find a relationship. To start this new chapter, she joined a dating app. At this stage, she wants to create a loving family and have children. After spending time chatting with different people online, 31-year-old Danielle met 30-year-old Ashley Gaddy, who works in the commercial sector. In early December 2022, they went on 2 dates and quickly felt attracted to each other. Danielle's mother noticed that her daughter was starting to build a serious relationship. Although Danielle did not have much experience in relationships, she sensed Ashley's serious intentions and felt excited about it. Ashley seemed like a kind, thoughtful, and intelligent person. However, some of her friends began to notice worrying signs in their relationship. Ashley seemed jealous and controlling, especially in the early stages of the relationship. Danielle found this aspect exciting. She saw it as a new challenge. Unfortunately, this move eventually led to tragedy. In December 2022, Danielle and Ashley went on their 3rd date. Danielle decided to do it during the Christmas holiday, which she usually spent with her friends. This was the first time Ashley had met Danielle's closest friends. She was a little nervous about how her friends and Ashley would get along. They all gathered at a bar in a local park on the outskirts of town, where Danielle ordered drinks and snacks. Everyone had a great time together. Afterwards, everyone described Ashley and Danielle's relationship as loving and warm. Throughout the evening, they hugged, smiled, and enjoyed their time together. This was the first time her friends had seen Danielle in such a serious relationship, and they were very happy for her, especially since she had been single for a long time. The group then started playing a question-and-answer game. However, things took an unexpected turn when Danielle and Ashley got into an argument. A few minutes ago, when asked about whether Danielle had ever been intimate with anyone, when Danielle answered yes, Ashley became upset. Not only was he unhappy, but he also cursed Danielle, shocking everyone around. Ashley accused her of cheating on him, which made him extremely angry. He abruptly stood up and left the table, but the conflict did not stop there. Danielle's phone was flooded with angry messages. Ashley insulted her in every way. Danielle decided to go out and try to calm Ashley, who was still lingering outside the bar. Danielle went out for about 20 minutes to talk to Ashley. Then she returned to the table with Ashley. According to friends, the anger had died down, as no one wanted to stir things up any further. The group continued drinking, and eventually Danielle and Ashley went to a friend named Taylor's house in Cranebrook, where they planned to spend the night. By 11:30 p.m., they had arrived and were ready for bed. Danielle and her boyfriend were given a guest room in the basement. Everything seemed peaceful, as if no conflict had occurred at the bar. However, in the middle of the night, Taylor was startled awake by a strange noise coming from the bedroom. His girlfriend also woke up, and after listening for a few minutes, they concluded that Ashley and Danielle were being intimate. They laughed about it together before going back to sleep. The next morning, Taylor and his girlfriend woke up later than usual, while Ashley and Danielle were still asleep. They chose not to wake anyone, because they were unsure when Ashley and Danielle had gone to bed. After a while, Taylor noticed that the basement bedroom was very quiet, so he decided to go down and check. Taylor knocked on the door but got no answer. He then carefully opened the door. Taylor noticed that there was no one in the bed. Confused, Taylor entered the room and saw someone lying on the floor under a blanket. When he pulled the blanket back, he saw Danielle. Her face was severely disfigured, and there was no sign that Ashley was in the room. Taylor rushed out of the basement in shock and told his girlfriend what had happened. He was shocked to learn that an assault had occurred in his home. His girlfriend quickly called the police to report that their friend was unresponsive. The friend had severe bruising to her face and visible marks on her neck. While waiting for the police, they attempted to give Danielle first aid but to no avail. When the police arrived, they confirmed that Danielle, 31, was dead. Her body was sent for an autopsy, which determined that she had died from strangulation and that she had been repeatedly struck, primarily in the face and head. Danielle suffered multiple blunt force injuries. It was determined that her attacker had wrestled her to the ground, sat on her, and covered her mouth so that she could not scream or breathe. As he did so, he began beating her, possibly with his bare hands, until she was asphyxiated. He continued to attack her shortly afterwards, as evidenced by bruises on her body. Ashley, 30, became the prime suspect in the attack, especially since he had been at the crime scene earlier. Initially, police thought that the time of the noises heard by Taylor and his girlfriend was when the murder occurred. No personal belongings were missing and the house was intact, making the robbery theory unlikely. Police discovered that the criminal had escaped through a window, leaving fingerprints on the window frame. These fingerprints belonged to Ashley. Later, neighbors reported seeing a man running away from the house at 5 a.m. During this time, police obtained a recording of Ashley's phone conversation with his mother after the incident. In this conversation, he admitted that he had overnight with Danielle in separate beds. He claimed that Danielle had asked him to be intimate, but he had refused. Throughout the conversation, he repeatedly claimed that he had done nothing wrong, attempting to convince his mother that he was innocent. He explained that he had woken up at 9:30 a.m. to find Danielle lying on the floor, severely beaten and not breathing. However, he maintained that he had not heard or witnessed the attack. Ashley claimed that he had been completely surprised by the situation and had panicked, which caused him to leave the scene. Ashley was extremely afraid of being wrongly convicted. Thanks to a phone call, the police were able to locate him in a remote mountainous area south of the city. When the police arrived at the house where he was staying, Ashley refused to surrender or admit his guilt. Instead, he climbed onto an observation deck and threatened to jump if the police did not leave him alone. To prevent a tragedy and ensure that he faced justice, a negotiation team was brought in. Despite this, Ashley stood his ground and asked the police to back off. The negotiators talked to him for 12 hours without a resolution. Finally, just before midnight, Ashley allowed an officer to approach him. Sensing that he was about to jump off the observation deck, the officers quickly grabbed him. Ashley, clearly distressed, fought back against the police. He was quickly arrested for Danielle's murder. Given Ashley's unstable emotional state, the first priority was to stabilize him so he could answer important questions. Psychiatrists diagnosed Ashley with a major depressive disorder and a tendency to self-harm. Ashley was arrested and placed on special watch due to concerns that he might attempt to take his own life. Police were not only shocked by the brutal murder, but also shocked by the fact that Danielle was not Ashley's first victim. He had a history of violent behavior, having assaulted his mother and sisters, who chose to endure the abuse rather than report it to the police for fear of retaliation. Between 2016 and 2021, at least 5 girls he dated reported being beaten and obtained restraining orders against him. In 2021, one of his ex-girlfriends was assaulted, leading to a lawsuit after he choked and severely beat her, which she fortunately survived. During the trial, both the psychiatrist and the prosecutor emphasized that Ashley had a high risk of reoffending. Despite this evidence, Ashley was only sentenced to community service, as it was his first documented crime. Unfortunately, this did not deter Ashley from further offending. Ashley assaulted his girlfriend again. The police took the case a little more seriously, resulting in Ashley being jailed. However, the sentence was too short, lasting only a few months, ending about 2 months before he met Danielle. During the investigation, a woman contacted police after seeing a news report featuring Ashley. She asked to remain anonymous, fearing that he would be released and seek revenge. Her identity was never revealed. The anonymous witness later revealed that she had received a friend request from Ashley on social media. Initially, he seemed charming, leading to a brief relationship. However, over time, Ashley became increasingly controlling and cruel. The relationship lasted 3 months, during which time the woman became genuinely frightened and suspected that Ashley had mental health issues. Police received similar accounts from her friends. During their 3-month relationship, Ashley emotionally devastated the woman, leaving her feeling completely drained. He then began physically abusing her. In July, she attempted to end the abusive relationship. However, this decision almost cost her her life. This incident happened when she was living with her father near Sydney. One summer night, Ashley broke into their house, attacked her and tried to strangle her. Luckily, she escaped. At the time, her father was sleeping at the other end of the house and did not hear the struggle. Her father later woke up and realized what was happening. He called the police after hearing her screams for help. The police quickly arrived and arrested the attacker at the scene. The girl admitted that if her father did not wake up and she could not escape to another room, Ashley would not stop until she was dead. After Ashley was arrested, the girl quickly described him as cruel and dangerous, claiming he had no control over his anger. Despite these concerns, he was released on bail and given a short sentence. Police discovered more victims, and before the preliminary hearing in the murder case had even begun, 14 cases of violence committed by Ashley had been confirmed in the 2 years following his first conviction and community service. Notably, the mother of one victim contacted police on her daughter's behalf. The girl's mother said her daughter had been engaged to Ashley, but he had been abusive and controlling. When their relationship finally ended, the family was greatly relieved. The police had to deal with a large amount of information and testimony from victims of Ashley's cruelty. But in the end, their efforts were in vain. On April 6, 2024, 16 months after Ashley was arrested, he was found dead in his cell. Police are currently investigating the details surrounding his death. Ashley maintains that he is innocent and has no remorse for his actions, denying all charges against him. With the help of psychiatrists, he appears to have made some progress in dealing with his difficulties and hopes to escape punishment by declaring himself insane. There are concerns that Ashley may have been targeted by fellow inmates, especially just days before he was scheduled to meet Danielle's family. Tragically, Danielle's family will never have the opportunity to express the pain caused by Ashley's actions. Despite this, Danielle's family are determined to seek justice. They have approached the authorities with a plan to change the law. They believe the legal system has failed to protect Danielle from a dangerous offender who has repeatedly harmed women without consequence. They want to ensure that justice is served and that similar incidents are prevented in the future. Danielle's family has received significant support, but it is unclear whether their efforts will be successful. In Danielle's case, the public and the media have both asked dating apps to provide statistics on users' criminal records, including any convictions or offenses. Danielle is a decent person with serious intentions, and she would have clearly avoided Ashley if she had known about his past with other women. There are suggestions that there should be special electronic monitoring for criminals like Ashley as they re-enter society. This not only ensures their safety, but also alerts the public to the potential risks that people like them can pose. Danielle's family are now campaigning for laws that would require mandatory checks on dating apps. They have received significant public support for this cause from the Australian public. According to Ashley's ex-girlfriends, these checks could help identify and prevent incidents like what happened to Danielle. The media has highlighted that Australian law seems to prioritize the safety of criminals over the well-being of those around them. Unfortunately, the justice system is slow, and any changes take time to make. There are now dating websites that allow users to check the criminal records and previous offenses of new acquaintances. However, this raises additional questions, such as how to ensure these databases are kept up to date. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Ana Ramirez. Amanda and Ana Ramirez, born on January 8, 1992, in Camden, New Jersey, USA, are identical twins, arriving just minutes apart. From a young age, they were incredibly close, often wearing similar clothes and choosing the same toys. Their relationship was characterized by understanding and genuine emotional, with conflicts between them being rare. Although they were born in the USA, they come from a family that emigrated from Puerto Rico, a large family with the dream of achieving the American dream. Despite facing challenges, their family's unity and love helped them overcome difficulties. Amanda and Ana were seeking a better life in the USA. When they grew up, their family gave birth to another daughter. Of course, Amanda and Ana stood them out because of their identical appearance. From a young age, their parents emphasized the special bond they had since their time in the womb. They slept in the same crib during their first months, which contributed to their close relationship. As they grew older, Amanda and Ana did everything together and acted as a team. They were very close and always stayed by each other's side. Their mother encouraged this bond, hoping Amanda and Ana would always support each other. And indeed, they did. Amanda and Ana took their first steps together, holding hands to keep from falling. The two girls, who grew stronger together, they were inseparable during kindergarten, elementary, and high school. Their bond stayed strong into adulthood, and it seemed like nothing could break this pure sisterly union, which grew stronger each year. Gradually, carefree childhood ended, and adulthood began. Ana had better relationships with man. She was the first of the twins to get married and become a mother. She was described as a loving and dedicated mother who did everything for her kids. At that time, Ana had completed courses and received certification in a field of activity related to helping people. This accentuates her friendly and positive personality. Colleagues and friends admired Ana's kindness, describes her as a friendly and humble beauty. When Ana became a mother, she had to balance her career with her family responsibilities, striving to create a bright future for her daughter. Later, she had 2 more children. Ana still maintains regular contact with her family, especially her beloved twin sister, Amanda. She often comes home to visit her grandparents, mother, brothers, and sisters. Anna and Amanda still keep in regular contact, they exchanging messages and phone calls to share their daily experiences. When Anna had a daughter, Amanda was eager to know all about her niece and frequently inquired about her. Amanda helped Anna a lot, supporting her in taking care of her children and learning the fundamentals of motherhood. Amanda also aspired to have her own family and become a mother, so she paid close attention to every piece of advice Anna offered. Amanda was kind and caring, always ready to assist. Amanda regularly spent time with Anna and her children. During the first few years of her life, Anna's eldest daughter spent a lot of time with both her mother and with her aunt, Amanda. This allowed the aunt, Amanda, to bond with her niece and gain valuable childcare experience. These skills and knowledge later proved useful to her. At that time, Anna was very busy, and it was with Amanda's help that she was able to manage daily tasks. Whenever they had free time, the sisters often spent time together, went for walks, and relaxed on weekends. Anna and Amanda loved parties and could go dancing all night long. In those moments, they were with their close friends. They were always friendly and cheerful. However, the story of the two sisters had a sad ending. Life showed that even the closest and most sincere connections can be broken in a cruel and heartless way, and the circumstances are so strange that it's almost impossible to tell the truth from the lies. In 2019, Anna and her twin sister Amanda were both 27 years old. Anna had 3 children, while Amanda had just given birth to her first child. During this time, Amanda was experiencing a difficult period in her life. She struggled with emotional problems after giving birth. She was diagnosed with postpartum depression, and her family around to support her. To help her sister Amanda through this difficult time, Anna often tried to bring some joy into her life. Amanda frequently met with Anna to have a drink and discuss the difficulty of motherhood, which both sisters understood well. On the evening of June 22, the sisters planned to attend a party with close friends. After the party, they intended to visit their cousin before heading home. That evening, Anna and Amanda gathered at home to choose their outfits and do their makeup. At the party, they had a great time, laughing and enjoying themselves. The next morning, Anna and Amanda posted a photo together on Anna's social media page and captioned it that they were having fun. Nobody anticipated that this cheerful post would be the last one where both twins would be alive. Just a few hours later, the police received a call from a distressed girl who said she had found her sister on the street. The caller is Amanda, and she urgently requested the officers to hurry. Amanda reported that Anna had been shot in the chest but didn't know who the shooter was. She noticed a deep cut on the right side of the chest. Anna was lying on the street right in front of their cousin's house, where they had spent most of the evening drinking and taking selfies. Amanda mentioned that they had visited a brother whom they had not seen for a long time, and it seems a conflict erupted there. Around 5:30, Anna was injured and collapsed on the sidewalk. After receiving the call, the medics quickly arrived at the scene. They found Anna lying on the asphalt in a pool of her own blood, while Amanda was not nearby. Anna had lost a large amount of blood, putting her life at risk, so urgent action was required. The police also responded and reached the scene after the ambulance. Anna was on the ground, seriously injured, bleeding, but still alive, with a deep wound in her chest. The medics promptly placed her in the ambulance and administered first aid during the ride. The police hoped Anna could identify her attacker, but she lost consciousness in the ambulance due to severe blood loss and was immediately taken to a medical center. On the way to the hospital, doctors tried to keep Anna alive. However, less than an hour later, at 6:20, the medical center staff pronounced her dead, unable to save her. This news was a devastating shock for her family. Suddenly, overnight, Anna, a mother of 3 children, was gone because of a violent act. The motive behind this senseless act was completely unclear. Anna was kind-hearted, empathetic, and had no legal issues or criminal history. Was she the victim of a random or intentional crime, and should the investigation focus on those around her to find the killer? The investigators quickly noticed that Anna's belongings, such as her money and mobile phone, were left untouched, suggesting she was not robbed. The violent nature of the incident indicated it was personal. Police began questioning neighbors, but they confirmed that Amanda's account of Anna arguing with her cousin was untrue. Several witnesses reported hearing only Anna and Amanda arguing loudly, with no men's voices present. This went on for a considerable time, until the argument stopped and the medics arrived. The police detectives came to Amanda's apartment to gather information. She had called the emergency number and was able to provide valuable information and an explanation of the argument. Amanda confirmed that she had argued with Anna that night, but she went home after the argument ended. Then something unexpected happened. Someone attacked Anna, but Amanda didn't see the attack. When she returned, she found Anna bleeding. When it was reported that Anna had died, Amanda showed no emotion. This might have been due to nervousness or exhaustion, but it caught the police's attention. Even though Amanda received the news of Anna's death with an odd calm, it was something else that caught the police's attention. What really intrigued the detectives were the bloodstains on Amanda's clothes. Additionally, her face had visible scratches and there was dried blood on her head. Her hands were covered in injuries typical of defensive actions, like cuts, suggesting she might have tried to take a knife from someone. The police also found several bloody footprints that went Anna's body on the street to the building's door, up the stairs, and reached the apartment where Amanda and Anna spent the night. At first, when investigators requested to enter the apartment, Amanda was hesitant to let them in because she was frightened and tried to persuade the officers that her injuries were accidental. However, the situation was too suspicious to accept her explanation. Ultimately, Amanda allowed the police to enter without requiring a warrant. At the apartment, they also discovered traces of blood. In the kitchen, they found a large carving knife in the sink, covered in dried blood. Detectives saw this as clear evidence implicating Amanda in Anna's death. She was promptly arrested and brought to the police station for questioning. During the interrogation, Amanda provided investigators with 3 different accounts of how Anna might have died. In the first account, Amanda claimed she had no idea what happened to Anna, stating that she found Anna already injured on the street. Amanda didn't notice any suspicious people or vehicles, leaving her completely baffled by the incident. Amanda thought that Anna would not have an enemy capable of such harm, so she speculated that her cousin might be involved. She recalled that Anna was conscious at the time but had lost a big amount of blood and was disoriented. Amanda got blood on herself while trying to help Anna and went into shock before entering the apartment, which seemed unconvincing. Additionally, Amanda didn't mention defensive wounds from a sharp object, and the bloody knife found in the kitchen was puzzling. Upon realizing that the police thought her story was a lie, Amanda attempted to revise her story. It's important to note that Amanda was very intoxicated, making it challenging for detectives to follow her narrative. Her testimony was confused and contradictory. Despite this, she offered a revised version of the incident that evening. They were at their cousin's house drinking. As morning approached, Anna drank too much and felt unwell, so she decided to order a taxi. When the car arrived, she said goodbye and left, but no one confirmed that she got into the car. After which Amanda decided to head home. On her way, she discovered Anna injured on the street. Anna had a severe chest wound and was bleeding heavily, but she couldn't explain what had happened. Amanda quickly called an ambulance and notified the police. The detectives attempted to reach the cousin who owned the apartment to verify Amanda's story. However, at the time, this was never done. Realizing her difficult position, Amanda desperately offered a third version of events. She confessed that while they were drinking, a fight broke out between she and Anna. Under the influence of alcohol, Anna lost control and punched she in the face. Although Amanda was momentarily disoriented, but she quickly regained her senses. She recalled feeling furious after Anna hit her, but then she experienced a memory lapse. Amanda intended to enter the apartment to cool down, but moments later, she found herself standing on the street in front of Anna, person who is bleeding. According to Amanda, she doesn't remember what happened during this time. The latest and most credible version of events is that during this time, she went into the apartment and took a kitchen knife. The conflict had subsided by then, although no one witnessed the incident, but all evidence suggests that Anna was killed. When Amanda saw Anna in that state, she went back to the apartment to grab a cell phone and call emergency services. During this time, she tossed a knife into the kitchen sink. She contacted the medics but stayed in the apartment, overwhelmed by shock. Sadly, Anna's injury was too severe, and she passed away. This tragedy deeply affected the Shi family. The news about the incident became a main topic in the media, especially within their local community. Many interviews were conducted, and most people found it hard to believe that such a tragedy could occur between them. Anna and Amanda's sisters were known to be so close, to the point that few can remember any petty quarrel between them. During this time, Amanda was arrested and sent to the County Correctional Center to await her murder trial. Her lawyer claimed the crime was accidental and argued that Amanda should be released on bail and placed under house arrest to care for her newborn daughter. However, the judge denied this request because of the crime's severity. Amanda was denied bail as she was deemed too dangerous for society. Concerns were raised about her emotional state, so psychiatrists frequently evaluated her. They found no mental disorders, deeming her sane and fit to stand trial. During this time, investigators thoroughly verified all the information provided. It was confirmed that Anna and Amanda did indeed spend time with cousin, who was eventually located and able to testify as a key witness. Although some neighbors heard arguments and the sounds of a struggle, no one witnessed the actual attack. Amanda continued to claim that she could not remember what happened. Cousin confirmed that a quarrel occurred between Anna and Amanda that night, but it ended, and he did not see any attack between them. The cousin stated that then Anna and Amanda had calmed down, and everything seemed normal. He never expected that Anna and Amanda, who had been so close since childhood, to be involved in something as unthinkable as a stabbing. The cousin confirmed that before things settled down, Anna and Amanda did get into a fight. This might explain the scratches on Amanda's hands and face, as well as more serious defensive wounds, deep cuts on her hands, suggesting they fought by a knife. However, the cousin did not know the reason for the sisters' fight. In September 2019, Amanda gave the investigators her final account of events to the best of her memory. She recalled having a fight with Anna while they were at their cousin's apartment, but claimed she was too drunk to remember the cause of the conflict. Amanda explained that at one point, she lost of awareness, and when she regained awareness, she found herself standing over Anna, holding a bloody knife. She noticed the bleeding was severe and worried that she might have been responsible. Feeling overwhelmed, Amanda said she left Anna in the street and fled. She confessed that she would never have acted this way if not for being intoxicated. Amanda, a young mother, recognized there was no excuse for her actions and expressed deep regret, but she stressed that the murder was accidental. The prosecution was certain that Amanda was not being entirely honest and that the attack was intentional. They believed that an argument led to Anna's death. Detectives suspected that Amanda had a motive, thinking she had held a long-standing grudge against Anna. In the end, her intoxication turned this anger into aggression. The investigators were trying to confirm if the act was premeditated. The police suspect that a man, who both sisters were attracted to, was involved in the incident, as he seemed to be the most likely cause of the conflict between them. Amanda explained this because she didn't want her loved ones to know that the death of Anna was due to such a trivial reason. This thing were confirmed by an anonymous source. One day, a man who wished to remain unnamed called the police station. He claimed that jealousy was the motive behind the cruel act against Anna. Anna's aunt also confirmed this thing. She shared the story with both the media and the police. According to her, the conflict arose because of Anna's husband. It was revealed that Amanda had secretly been in love with him for a long time. She envied Anna, and even used her resemblance to Anna to have sexual relations with him. When Anna discovered this, she was furious and accused Amanda of betrayal. The aunt mentioned that Amanda had often bragged that neither Anna nor her husband had any idea about the deception. This seemed especially horrific in light of the murder, giving the police strong reasons to suspect a premeditated act driven by jealousy. Even so, Amanda's family provided her with strong support. Her mother attended every hearing and was moved every time. Her mother realized that one daughter was already lost forever, and Amanda faced the possibility of spending her life in prison, which filled her with sorrow. Other relatives were also consistently present at the hearings, repeatedly pleading with the judge for leniency. They highlighted that Amanda had recently given birth, and her child risked growing up without a caring mother. In addition, the family also opposes the theory that the motive for the attack was a love triangle. Except for an aunt who gave conflicting testimony about affairs, no one had heard such rumors about Amanda's personal life. Everyone saw how warm and close the relationship between Anna and Amanda was. Even during the last party, they seemed very friendly. It was unlikely that they would have maintained such a close connection after the betrayal. Amanda's younger sister, named Monica, who was 19 at the time of the trial, claimed that Anna and Amanda had a very strong bond. She was sure there couldn't be any love triangles in their lives. Both sisters were decent and wouldn't get involved in something like that. Monica said that Anna had been in a long-term relationship with a man named Luis Rivera, who was also her husband. During that time, Amanda also had a boyfriend, with whom she had a child, and they were planning to get married. Therefore, there was no reason for Amanda to date Anna's boyfriend secretly. Monica added that Amanda called her as soon as the tragic incident happened. Amanda cried a lot during the phone call, insisting she did not remember anything. Monica believed that, in her current state, Amanda would be honest and confess if she were guilty. Consequently, she dismissed the prosecutor's suggestion that Amanda was involved with Anna's husband. Anna's husband also denied having any affair with Amanda's, stating that he could easily differentiate them and such deception was impossible. The prosecution continued to question Amanda, they trying to understand the motive behind the massacre, but they couldn't get any more information. Despite the murder, the entire Ramirez family and those connected to Amanda dismissed the idea of a love triangle as fiction. They were convinced that the case materials were fabricated by the police to treat the crime as a premeditated attack, which would mean imprisoning Amanda for a longer time. Anna's husband, Luis, firmly denied the aunt's statements. However, the prosecution continued with this theory, suggesting that Luis was unaware of being manipulated. The accusation of infidelity was central to the prosecution's strategy, which deeply enraged the entire Ramirez family. Amanda's lawyer mentioned that the incident might not be solely related to alcohol intoxication that night. Anna and Amanda drank a lot, but the aggression was due to postpartum depression. Amanda faced emotional issues after her pregnancy and struggled to manage them. Her lawyer explained that her mental state, along with excessive alcohol consumption, triggered an episode of uncontrollable aggression. Unfortunately, there wasn't enough evidence to support this claim. A psychiatric evaluation revealed that Amanda was fully aware of her actions. The tears of the mother and the pleas of the sisters had a positive impact. In November 2019, Amanda reached a deal with the prosecution. This deal resolved the controversy surrounding her motive and spared her family the ordeal of a lengthy trial. In the end, Amanda received a sentence of only 6 years in prison. She will be eligible for parole after serving 5 years. During the sentencing hearing, Amanda was overcome with emotion, breaking down in tears and trembling. She acknowledged that her actions were inexcusable, expressing remorse to those present. For Amanda, the most severe punishment was the pain of loss she would feel for the rest of her life. Amanda asked for forgiveness. Although inconsolable, but the family said they held no grudges and considered the punishment fair. Furthermore, Amanda's mother and younger sister announced they would continue to support she and her children until her release. Anna's mother took responsibility and custody of Anna's children. All the children went to live with their grandmother. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Rachel McLean. Rachel McLean returned home to Blackpool, UK, for the summer of 1990. She was 18 years old and had just finished her first year at Oxford. Rachel was very busy with her studies and spent all her free time studying. She had a healthy lifestyle and played sports. Rachel had many friends and loved heavy metal music. She joined a local charity, where she worked during the summer. While on a day off, Rachel was relaxing with friends at a local club when she met a bartender named John Turner, who had long brown hair. John was from Nottingham and had returned to Blackpool for the summer. Rachel found him attractive and easy to talk to, so they quickly became interested in each other. That night, they chatted. John attended Rachel's 19th birthday party. After the party, they had a passionate night together. According to John, their relationship continued to develop. However, at the end of the summer, Rachel had to return to Oxford, and John returned to Nottingham. The two cities were just over 2 hours' drive apart, so they could easily visit each other. They spent weekends together and kept in touch by letter and phone during the week. John wrote Rachel long love letters, which she enjoyed. John Turner was born in HMP, but as a child he moved to New Zealand with his parents and settled in a city called Bath. The family lived in 2 countries before John returned to the UK to study at King's College. During his time there, he won the hearts of both students and teachers. He hosted a show on the local college radio station twice a week and was a talented athlete on the soccer team. Rachel McLean was a promising student. Her literature teacher at college admired her achievements. Rachel started college in the same year as John. On Christmas, Rachel invited John to meet her parents and they had a nice evening together. Rachel's parents were very happy with her choice, finding John intelligent, good-looking and confident. John became increasingly infatuated with Rachel but was saddened by the distance between them. During this time, she moved into a student apartment on the first floor of the school with 4 other students. John felt anxious and jealous because one of her neighbors was a man and the boys often visited her house. To cope, he wrote and called her constantly. However, Rachel was very busy with work and study. Since there were no mobile phones in those days, they could only communicate by landline. She would often come home at the end of the evening, exhausted, and go straight to bed. She did not have the opportunity to communicate with John regularly. His dissatisfaction increased with each missed call and he became increasingly jealous. His possessiveness became evident during this time and he complained to her, which began to annoy Rachel. On February 11th, she sent him a Valentine's card, calling him the only love of her life. However, around that time, she wrote in her diary about her lover in very unflattering terms. It seemed that she had doubts about whether John was the person she could spend the rest of her life with. On Valentine's Day, John proposed to her, but she unexpectedly refused, which shocked him. She explained that she was not ready. John said that he understood and would wait. They continued their relationship, calling each other occasionally and rarely seeing each other. 2 months later, in April, they planned to spend the Easter holidays together. John went to Blackpool again on Saturday, and Rachel's mother took her back to Oxford because she had important school matters to attend to on Sunday. They planned to have a quiet day together at her student flat, as it was their last weekend before Rachel's exams. Rachel spent a lot of time preparing for her exams. While she was studying, her boyfriend was watching football in the living room because he was a Nottingham fan. That weekend, the team played in the FA Cup semi-finals, so the next day John got on the train and returned to Nottingham. There was no one in the student flat all week because the young people had gone home for the holidays. Everyone wanted to spend time with their loved ones because they wouldn't have the chance until the end of the year. By Monday, her roommates began to return, eager to see Rachel and hear about her weekend. However, Rachel was missing. Her room was empty, the windows were open, but nothing else seemed out of the ordinary. The students assumed she was busy with other activities. On Wednesday, her boyfriend, John, tried to call her, but she did not answer. They had planned to stay in touch, but Rachel did not return his calls. John assumed that she was busy and did not want to bother her. However, after 2 days of silence, which was unusual since their relationship had only recently improved, John began to worry. He called again, but still received no response. The next day, he tried again, but was unsuccessful. There was no social media at the time, so John left a message on her answering machine. But she remained silent. He also sent her a letter by regular mail, which he sent as soon as he got home. The letter arrived in New Mexico on Thursday, and John thanked Rachel for a wonderful weekend and wished her luck with her exams. On April 19, 1991, 19-year-old Rachel failed to show up for her exam, which was especially worrying because she had been studying hard and the exam was extremely important to her. When the exam proctors tried to contact her, they were unsuccessful. Her parents also had no idea where she was, prompting them to report her missing to the police. The Oxford police were initially skeptical. They received dozens of missing student reports each month because parents went to the police station after parties. In 99% of cases, teens sobered up from drinking and returned to school within 24 hours. But that was not the case. This diligent student had been missing for days and had not been heard from at all. None of her friends knew where she was, so the police became interested in what had happened. They immediately went to the apartment where Rachel had gone missing. Detective Susie Krug was looking for information about the students who had been in the same room as Rachel. Victoria Clare, Margaret Smith, Sarah Hume, and John Forby. The friends immediately pointed to Rachel's boyfriend, who was annoying everyone with his jealousy. They showed a letter he had sent from Nottingham around the time Rachel went missing. The neighbors also confirmed that John Turner was the last person Rachel had been in contact with. The room they checked showed no signs of forced entry, robbery, struggle, or blood. Everything was in its place. The police found Rachel's diary, which might contain important clues. The police began to study the contents of the diary. They knew that John was possessive and jealous of his girlfriend, wanting to know her whereabouts and presence at all times. This behavior gradually began to annoy Rachel. Their conflicts often arose over this issue. On April 22, police met with John Turner. 22. During the conversation, John expressed concern about his missing girlfriend. He was asked to describe his activities during the time Rachel went missing. John mentioned that they had a great weekend together and that everything was fine before they broke up. He said that he woke up early, showered, and that they had sex in the afternoon. After lunch, they went to Oxford Station together at around 4:15 p.m., taking a bus. They had a few hours before their train arrived, and while waiting, they bumped into a friend of Rachel's at around 5 p.m. The three of them went to a local coffee shop and had coffee. Rachel's friend was described as a dark-skinned man with long hair, wearing ripped jeans and a black jacket. He was similar in appearance to John, except for his dark skin. John admitted that he could not remember the man's name because they had just met and he did not expect to become friends with him. According to John, the man offered to drive Rachel home in his car. She agreed, and then John and Rachel said goodbye. John returned to Nottingham, while Rachel went with her friend to her apartment. However, John's story about the man was very suspicious. The police suspected that John was lying, and he quickly became the prime suspect in Rachel's disappearance, as she had been missing for a long time, leading to concerns that she might be dead or imprisoned. Urgent action was needed. First, it was important to learn more about the prime suspect, as he was the last known person to have had contact with Rachel, and his story about a black man needed further investigation. Rachel's disappearance left everyone baffled because none of her roommates or friends remembered her having such a friend. In order to gather more witnesses, the police shared information about the case. From the beginning, there was no reason to think that she had run away. The police first checked this possibility by talking to Rachel's family and friends. Rachel had no problems with her loved ones, friends, studies, or personal life. She was eagerly preparing for exams, which made it impossible for her to not attend. Rachel never complained about any problems, nor did she suffer from drug addiction or mental problems. People like her usually do not run away, and all of her belongings were left untouched. This allowed the police to rule out the possibility that she had run away on purpose. The police were skeptical of John's testimony and assigned a police officer to approach him and gain his trust. The officer's job was to observe John's reactions and behavior while updating him on the investigation. From the beginning, the officer suspected John of lying to them, noticing that he became nervous when talking about Rachel, despite his attempts to hide it. Despite these suspicions, a week of surveillance did not reveal any useful information to help the case. Meanwhile, the police were searching the neighborhood for witnesses, K9 units were working with dogs, and divers were examining local waters. Several people remembered seeing John, but no one could confirm that he had left the house with Rachel. In addition, he had not been behaving suspiciously, so this witness's testimony did not add anything to the search. During this time, John continued to cooperate with the investigation. He even helped create a composite sketch of the man who, according to him, was supposed to drive Rachel back to her apartment. John believes this friend was responsible for her abduction. It has now been 2 weeks and police believe she is no longer alive. No ransom demands have been made, ruling out kidnapping as a motive. Search teams, including police, rescue workers, and volunteers, have scoured a large area around Oxford, including drains and boating holes, but their efforts have been in vain. The police examined Rachel's diary and discovered her true feelings for John, a disturbing mix of hatred and pity. She expressed that she was unable to confront him directly or leave because she was afraid. Rachel had no genuine feelings for John, and her Valentine's Day gestures were more like a duty than a genuine expression of love. She knew that John was unstable and prone to losing control when angry. Afraid to face this reality, she admitted that their closeness was harmful and needed to end. In stark contrast, John described their relationship as happy, often emphasizing their frequent sexual activity during interrogations. Meanwhile, Rachel wrote of her disgust for him but felt powerless to stop their closeness. The police believe he may have killed her after reading her diary and discovering her true feelings, but more evidence is needed to prove his guilt. John has been actively cooperating with the investigation. He has attended a press conference to draw public attention to the search for Rachel and to help reconstruct the last day he spent with her. John describes the events at the station, claiming that a stranger, whom he says was a dark-skinned friend of Rachel's, was involved in her disappearance. The plan is to closely monitor John's reactions and behavior during these events, as experienced journalists can identify inconsistencies in his story. Many people have noted that John's description of the dark-skinned guy closely matches his appearance, including his clothing, except for his skin color. It is as if he was trying to describe himself but changing his race. In addition, the public took note of John's strange reactions when asked if he thought Rachel was still alive. He vaguely stated, in his heart, he wanted to think so, which further aroused suspicion among the conference attendees. Throughout the conversation, the guy's smile never seemed to disappear. This event greatly promoted the investigation into Rachel's disappearance. Several random witnesses who were watching the press conference on television clearly remembered the events of the day the girl disappeared at the train station. They contacted the police, saying that only John was at the cafe at the station, there was no girl or anyone else with him. Among the witnesses was a man sitting at the next table. He noticed that John seemed very nervous while drinking coffee, constantly looking around and startled. According to this witness, at one point, John took out a piece of paper and started writing. Perhaps Rachel was no longer alive at that time, and John began writing the same letter he had sent immediately after arriving in Notting. All this was done to create an alibi for himself. It has been established that John and Rachel went to the station together by bus, although there were no cameras there at that time. However, during that time in the city, all passengers who boarded the bus and paid for their tickets were monitored by special electronic devices. It was impossible to ride without paying. When checked, it was discovered that Rachel had not paid for the trip, which showed that she was not with John and could not have been there that day. Therefore, John lied. The reason for his lie remains unclear, and it is still unknown where Rachel's body could be. Police suspected that her remains might still be in the student apartment or somewhere on campus. Surveillance cameras covered the area around the building, but none of them showed John carrying any large, suspicious items. Police requested a floor plan of the student dormitory and discovered that there were voids under the floorboards. Police returned to the apartment where Rachel had lived and removed the floorboards. There, they found her body tightly packed in a bag, only 20 centimeters high. The cold weather at the time slowed the body's decomposition. In addition, the space between floors was structurally well ventilated, so the decomposing body did not emit a foul odor and was not discovered until 19 days after her death. Because Rachel's body was so well preserved, the forensic expert was able to determine the circumstances of her death with a high degree of accuracy within an hour. John was then questioned by the police. Initially, he refused to answer police questions. However, the next day, he confessed to killing Rachel. He said that after watching a football match, he proposed to Rachel, hoping that she would accept, but she refused. The couple exchanged a few words. As a result, he lost his temper and attacked her. In his confession, John admitted that he did not understand why she refused to get engaged. She did not want to answer for a long time but finally admitted that she had been having an affair and that she was not sure that she was ready to commit her life to John. In response, he insulted her. Rachel tried to hit him, and after the slap, he lost control and pinned her down on the chair with his weight, preventing her from moving. John claimed that he did not remember what happened next. When he regained consciousness, he found himself sitting on a couch in front of Rachel's lifeless body. Forensic experts confirmed that Rachel had been strangled. There was a deep, thin mark on her neck, indicating the use of an object rather than hands. The tie Rachel had given him for Christmas was missing from the crime scene and from John's belongings, believed to have been used to kill her. After a while, he decided to dispose of the body. Unable to get the body out of the building, he put it in a bag, removed the floorboards from Rachel's room, and stuffed the body into a small space. He then quietly reinstalled the floorboards. John then packed his things and headed to the bus station. While waiting for the train at a coffee shop, he wrote a letter to Rachel. In the letter, he thanked her for the weekend they spent together and mentioned a black man who was supposed to drive her home, which was a made-up story. He had invented this character to support the lie he had created. He also expressed concern for his girlfriend, who would be alone for several days. After sending the letter, he called her several times and left messages on her answering machine. John then wrote another letter, addressed to Rachel in New Mexico, saying that he had tried to call her several times during the week and was very worried, hoping she would call back soon. This deception allowed him to fool the police and the public for 19 days. Afterward, despite his confession, John Turner maintained his innocence. In December 1991, John claimed that his actions were in self-defense. He wanted to avoid a life sentence for premeditated murder, so he argued that the girl's death was accidental. Rachel was described as argumentative and unfaithful, often insulting John. John also stressed the humiliation he suffered at the hands of Rachel. He had erectile dysfunction due to the disease and claimed that she constantly criticized him for it. This was especially difficult during the outbreak when he was unable to have sex with her due to pain in his groin and abdomen. In court, his lawyer portrayed him as the victim. He was a caring man in love, dreamed of marrying Rachel and proposed to her twice, both times being rejected. Of course, all of this is not true, because judging by the diary entries, the girl was generally uncomfortable with intimate contact with John. There is no evidence that Rachel had any intrigue or relationship with anyone else. Rachel's close friends did not know about any other guy. Many believe that she made up the story of the affair to justify her quick breakup with John, but it is possible that she never actually said this, it was just his word. In the end, the jury did not believe John and he was sentenced to life in prison, with the right to parole. John's story does not end there. While serving his sentence, he developed a relationship with a 20-year-old woman who looked exactly like Rachel. She learned about him through a newspaper article and became interested, believing that he had been wrongly convicted. Despite being imprisoned, they began a romantic relationship. Lawyers continued to fight for John's release and maintained his innocence. In 2003, after 11 years behind bars, John was paroled. He returned to New Zealand, intending to start his life over. His girlfriend, whom he met while in prison, followed him to New Zealand to attend university in Whanganui, the city where John lived. Apparently, 11 years in prison did not benefit John because he then attacked and began strangling the new girl, who believed he was innocent. John was 49 at the time. Fortunately, the attack was not serious and the girl was able to escape without serious injury. According to several witnesses and victims, John had lost control of his temper several times in the 6 months leading up to the incident. It was clear that he had anger management issues. John often became jealous and turned small problems into big arguments, often insulting his partner in front of others. Some time after the initial incident, the situation recurred and he attacked her again. During this time, the couple were staying at a motel in the city of Whanganui. There, they argued again. John threw his girlfriend onto the bed, raised his fists and punched her in the face while holding her down with his weight. However, he regained his composure and left the room. A few hours later, the girl texted John, saying that she was ending the relationship. She said that he was dangerous and needed to attend an anger management program. In response, he flew into a rage again, returned to the motel and stormed into the room. He attacked her, tore her clothes off, demanded sex, hit her on the head several times and threatened to kill her. In 2018, the girl reported John to the police and he was charged with assault. He was sentenced to 2 years and 9 months in prison. The sentence was relatively light because the conviction occurred in New Zealand. If the attack had happened in the UK, he would have faced a life sentence. Despite the attack, his new girlfriend told the media that she believes anger management is still an issue for John and that he needs help. She hopes he can control his anger and that they can rekindle their relationship, despite the mental and physical abuse he has inflicted on her. In court, she admitted that he had threatened to kill her if she tried to leave him, although she did not take the threat seriously. John has recently been released from prison, but his current situation is unknown. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Sandra Miles. Sandra was born on May 26, 1949, in the small, cozy town of Harn, Kansas, USA. She had a close relationship with her sister. They attended the same school, walked together, and spent time with their family. After graduating from high school, Sandra focused on starting a family. She was in a serious relationship with her boyfriend, and they decided to get married. They welcomed a son named Chad. Unfortunately, the marriage did not work out. Sandra quickly realized that her husband was not the right match for her. After the divorce, Sandra found another partner, but that relationship also ended in disappointment, leading her to break up with him as well. In 1976, Sandra, a single mother, got a job at a factory that made pumps and pistons for industrial machinery. This job required her family to relocate to a larger city, Hutchinson. In her new position, Sandra proved herself and gained the respect of management through her hard work and responsibility. She performed her tasks exceptionally well. It was during this time that she met her third husband, Jerry Miles. They were instantly attracted to each other, and their friendship quickly blossomed into romance, leading to their decision to marry. Their marriage happened rapidly, but it was evident that Jerry and Sandra truly loved each other and were eager to get married. A year later, Sandra was expecting a baby with her new husband. In September of that year, they welcomed their daughter, Tracy, who brought immense joy to her parents, especially Sandra, who had always dreamed of having a large family. During this time, their marriage appeared to be perfect. The couple had a strong bond and prioritized their family above all else. Jerry's children regularly communicated with him and participated in family events. He particularly enjoyed spending time with Tracy at the nearby lake. To outsiders, their marriage appeared perfect. However, only close friends and family knew of the underlying issue. After 7 years of marriage, Sandra could no longer endure her husband's alcoholism. This revelation shocked many, as she had previously concealed the problem. Sandra ultimately chose to end her marriage to her third husband, Jerry, and raise their children by herself. She thought Jerry was a kind man when he was sober, but he had difficulty managing his drinking. When he drank, he became a completely different person. At first, he was able to control his drinking, but over time, his alcoholism became more and more evident. His relapses became more frequent, placing a heavy burden on Sandra. She worked every day at the factory to support the family and eventually became exhausted from the thing. Sandra always saw Jerry as a wonderful husband and father. Their relationship ended because he struggled with alcohol addiction. Even so, she continued to support their children while maintaining her job. This was a challenging time for her, but she was determined not to give up and managed to handle the difficulties well. Jerry offered some help, but when he succumbed to alcohol again, Sandra had to face all the challenges alone. Despite this, she stayed confident in her abilities and was driven to ensure her children had a bright future and everything they needed for a fulfilling life. It was certainly challenging, but Sandra Miles was not one to give up easily. She remained a conscientious mother, spending all her free time with her children. Despite facing difficulties, she handled them with grace, which brought her closer to her daughter Tracy during this time. Her son had grown up, moved out, and started his own life, but Tracy continues to support her mother because she realizes that Sandra's efforts are mainly to benefit her. In the spring of 1997, Sandra's relationship with Tracy, her 16-year-old daughter, began to deteriorate. Tracy has started dating her first boyfriend and is going through the rebellious phase that is common in adolescence. Sandra tried to improve their relationship. She thought her daughter's problems were only temporary. At the same time, Sandra was mindful of her own past failed marriages and felt the need to caution Tracy about the mistakes she made in her youth. Tracy's affection for her mother faded quickly, leading to a strained relationship between them. To win her daughter's love, Sandra bought Tracy a Black Moon car, which Tracy had longed for. This gift excited Tracy. She adored her car and made a point to arrive first at school every day so everyone would notice it. It seemed like Tracy had a bright future ahead, and she represented hope for Sandra. Sandra was determined to do whatever it took to help her daughter succeed. However, fate can be cruel. On March 20th, Sandra's son Chad and his girlfriend Mindy visited her with exciting news. Mindy was pregnant. Sandra was thrilled at the prospect of becoming a grandmother and eagerly anticipated the birth of her grandson. Unfortunately, Sandra would not live to see that moment. While Sandra's sister, Pat Douglas Butler, was having breakfast with her husband, she received an urgent call from Sandra's workplace. Sandra's employer reported that Sandra had been absent for 5 days. Concerned for her well-being, the boss tried to contact her but was unable to reach her. Pat also hadn't heard from her during this time, as they didn't typically call each other every day. Worried, Pat and her husband decided to visit Sandra's house to check if she was okay or if she needed help. When Pat and her husband arrived, they found the door locked and the house appeared deserted. This was strange because Sandra lived there with her daughter, Tracy, who was usually very active and should have been home at that time. Then, Pat and her husband went to the school to look for Tracy. The teachers were confused as Tracy had also been absent for several days. The class teacher, Noni, tried to call the family, but no one answered. Alarmed by the situation, Pat decided to call the police to report the disappearance of both Sandra and Tracy. The officers took Pat's statement and assessed the situation. When they arrived, Pat was waiting for them and handed over a spare key to the front door that she had kept. Law enforcement officers entered the house and immediately detected a strong, unpleasant smell of decomposition, unmistakable in nature. The experienced patrol officers recognized the importance of preserving the crime scene to protect the evidence, so they called for backup. When additional police officers arrived, they discovered the decomposed body of a woman lying on her bed, covered with a blanket. Upon removing the blanket, they found a power cord from a household appliance wrapped around her neck, indicating she likely died from strangulation. Additionally, there were multiple injuries visible on her face and head. Due to the severe level of decomposition, the victim's identity could not be immediately determined. It was unclear how many blows she had suffered or what exactly was hit with, but it was clear that her death was not natural, it was a murder. A forensic medical examination was needed to understand the details surrounding her death. However, dental records confirmed that the body belonged to Sandra Miles. Besides, they could not find Tracy in the house, indicating that she was missing. At first, detectives thought Tracy might also be a victim of the same attacker. They searched the house thoroughly, but found no evidence suggesting she had been harmed like her mother. It was possible that Tracy had been kidnapped, placing her in great danger and requiring immediate action. She was added to the missing persons list, and the search for her began. It was unclear who would wish harm on Sandra, a woman who devoted her life to creating a future for her children. When Detective Hutchinson began investigating the case, they considered every possibility, including neighbors and her ex-husband. The aim was to uncover who had a motive for the murder of 48-year-old Sandra Miles and the disappearance of Tracy. Sandra's family, sister, son, and ex-husband were quickly informed of the tragic news. All were in shock. Sandra seemed to have no enemies and was known as a kind and gentle person who worked hard to overcome life's difficulty and support her daughter. It was hard to believe anyone could be so cruel to someone defenseless. Tracy's brother, Chad, made an appeal through the newspaper, asking locals to help find Tracy, his only surviving family member who had been taken from him. Forensic experts have revealed harrowing details of Sandra's last moments. Sandra had been knocked to the ground by repeated blows to her head with a blunt object. While she was incapacitated, a power cord was used to strangle her. The presence of large bruises and internal bleeding indicated she endured a prolonged and violent assault. The medical examiner believed there were likely at least 2 attackers. Investigators suggested that the incident was a robbery gone wrong, possibly triggered when Sandra confronted the intruders as they attempted to steal from her home. Sandra might have seen them, then a fight broke out, and they murdered her because they were afraid she would report to the police. However, after inspecting the crime scene, detectives found this scenario unlikely. There were no signs of a break-in, and the house lost nothing, except Tracy's favorite car. It didn't make sense to commit murder for the sake of theft. The brutality of Sandra's injuries was notable. An ordinary robber wouldn't have wasted time with strangulation, they would have shot her to avoid confrontation. The severe damage to her upper body indicated that the injuries were not a result of panic from being caught, but rather a deliberate attack meant to kill. This level of cruelty suggested a culmination of a long-standing feud. Another possibility considered was that of a maniacal attacker, but generally, such individuals act alone. This crime, however, was clearly carried out by multiple people given the severity of the injuries. Now, the killers had taken Tracy captive, making it urgent to locate the criminals. The detectives believed that Sandra had willingly let her attackers into the house, as there were no signs of forced entry. Therefore, they recognized the need to continue the investigation. The police contacted all of Sandra's relatives, friends, neighbors, and co-workers as part of their investigation. The police focused particularly on her ex-husbands, as they might have motives rooted in resentment. Sandra's third husband, Jerry, who struggled with alcoholism, drew significant attention. He may have been unhappy after the divorce, and the detective speculated that he could have confronted Sandra while intoxicated, possibly leading to her death. However, the detectives to find that he had an alibi, so he was removed from the list of suspects. Police interviewed all of Sandra's acquaintances to identify suspects in the violent massacre and possibly Tracy's kidnapping. Sandra's sister, Pat, informed detectives that she last saw Sandra alive 5 days earlier. On that day, she received a work call around the same time Tracy visited the school where she studied, making it a key date in the investigation. Efforts to gather information from friends and acquaintances were unproductive. So detectives turned to the neighbors. They discovered that the neighborhood was peaceful and close-knit, where everyone was familiar with one another. The next day, news of the incident at Sandra's house spread quickly. A crowd gathered in the yard and driveway, prompting the police to restrict access to the area. Many neighbors stopped by out of curiosity, anxious to learn what had happened. There was a growing concern in everyone, as they realized a dangerous killer, and possibly a kidnapper, was still at large, especially since there had been no word from Tracy. Fortunately, some witnesses in the crowd provided valuable information to the detectives. A neighbor who lived directly across the street reported seeing Tracy about 5 days earlier, on March 25th. He had noticed her with 2 young men. They all got into one of the guy's cars and drove away, and he never saw them again. This account raised questions about the nature of Tracy's disappearance, as it didn't fit the typical scenario of a schoolgirl being kidnapped. The friends, identified as Mark and Jay, lived nearby, so the detectives decided to interview them at their homes. Mark quickly left as several police officers spotted a red car in the distance. When Mark noticed the police approaching, he sped away and vanished at high speed. This behavior seemed suspicious, so one of the detectives alerted the patrol nearby about his direction. Mark wouldn't have fled so rapidly if he weren't trying to hide something from the police. Luckily, it didn't take long for them to catch up. Mark was eventually stopped just a few kilometers from his home. Mark was driving his car with a friend who was anxious about the recent tragedy at Sandra's house. The two young men attempted to convince the police that their fear was the only reason for their unusual behavior, but seasoned detectives sensed they were hiding something. Consequently, both were taken to the police station for questioning. During the interrogation, the young men insisted they were merely frightened by the news of the incident at the Miles residence. Their stories closely matched, but the police found no solid evidence against them, so they were released. However, they became important witnesses because the police were aware that Tracy had recently been in a relationship with a young man named Jeremy Bell. They also knew that Sandra disapproved of him, believing he would have a negative impact on her daughter's life. Eventually, Tracy broke up with Jeremy and started dating Paul Nelson. Several witnesses stated that shortly before the tragedy, Tracy had a significant argument with her mother over Jeremy and Paul, both of whom Sandra disapproved. Detectives began interviewing numerous teenagers connected to this group. It was established that Tracy's ex, Jeremy, had a volatile temperament and had even made threats against Paul. However, Paul was not the main reason for Tracy and Jeremy's breakup. That was largely due to Sandra's disapproval, which may have prompted Jeremy's hostility toward her. In fact, the relationship between Sandra and Jeremy was extremely strained. Sandra had to go to the police station to obtain a restraining order against Jeremy. He accused her of ruining his relationship with her daughter, Tracy, and threatened her, although he never acted on these threats. During drunken parties, he often expressed how much Sandra bothered him to his friends. Sandra was determined to protect her daughter from him, which only led to more conflicts. It was known that Jeremy was already on the police's radar due to his numerous violations, and the restraining order worsened the situation. He clearly held a grudge against Sandra, which raised concerns that he could have kidnapped Tracy. At this point, detectives believed that Jeremy had killed Sandra and was now holding Tracy captive. They decided to question Jeremy, who, along with his friend William Lennon, had been arrested for burglary on the 1st of the month, just a few days before Sandra's murder. Since Jeremy was in prison during the time of the murder, he could not have been involved in Sandra's death. The fate of Tracy remained uncertain. The kidnapper had not made any demands, leading the police to fear that she might already be dead, although there was still a chance she was being held hostage. Time was of the essence for her safety. When investigators spoke with Jeremy in prison, he explained that he was not in a relationship with Tracy at the time of Sandra's murder due to a restraining order that required him to avoid contact with her. As a result, they broke up. During this time, Tracy began dating another man, Paul Nelson, which led Jeremy to distance himself from her. The police noticed that Jeremy appeared to strongly dislike Paul and openly expressed a desire to confront. Jeremy accused Paul of encouraging Tracy to engage in criminal behavior and worried that she might become involved with drugs because of her relationship with him. However, he stated that he did not harbor any ill feelings toward Sandra. In fact, their communication improved once Tracy started dating Paul. As Sandra shifted her anger towards Paul, Jeremy supported Sandra during this time. On March 25th, just before Sandra's murder, Jeremy warned Tracy about her new boyfriend, Paul, whom he considered dangerous. By that time, the autopsy results were complete. The medical examiner determined that Sandra died on March 26 from 4 stab wounds and significant blunt force trauma to the head. These injuries were confirmed as the cause of death, and strangulation was also used to ensure she was dead. The police needed to locate Paul Nelson, the main suspect, to question him. However, he was missing. His parents reported that he hadn't been seen since March 26. Like Tracy, detectives believed he was involved in Sandra's murder. They needed to find him and uncover what happened to Tracy, but they could only address that after detaining he. Investigators discovered that Paul had been in regular contact with his friend Zwickle, with whom he had lived before going into hiding. When detectives spoke with Zwickle, he provided valuable information. He confirmed that Sandra did not approve of the relationship between Tracy and Paul. Sandra believed that Paul, Tracy's new boyfriend, was a bad influence and was trying to get her involved with drugs. Despite Sandra's objections, Tracy and Paul continued to meet secretly. After several weeks, Sandra found out about it and was upset. She told her daughter that getting involved with a drug addict was a big mistake. Despite this, she refused to face the truth. Her mother urged her to end the relationship with Paul. Sandra then informed Tracy that if she wanted a family and children, she would need to move in with Paul. This news surprised both Tracy and Paul, as they had nowhere to live. Sandra advised Tracy to think about ending her pregnancy, and Tracy consented. However, their relationship worsened after the abortion. A shocking moment for Tracy was when Sandra threatened to take her car keys if she didn't end her relationship with Paul. This tension may have led Paul to develop a grudge against Sandra, who he and Tracy saw as an obstacle to their relationship. Paul's friend, Zwickle, reported that on March 26, Paul returned home around 10 a.m. and immediately began packing his belongings. Paul mentioned that he was planning to leave with Tracy and that they had $2,000, which he believed would be sufficient for their escape. Paul confided in Zwickle that he and Tracy intended to run away in her car, and Zwickle assumed they were fleeing due to a disagreement. However, Paul did not mention Sandra's death to Zwickle. When Zwickle inquired about how Paul obtained the money, he claimed he had sold Sandra's tape recorder to a pawn shop. It was later discovered that tape recorder had indeed gone missing from the house after the attack. In reality, Paul was not being truthful. Selling tape recorder only netted him less than $50. It remained unclear how Paul could have acquired such a significant amount of money at that time. Afterwards, Zwickle noticed how Paul and Tracy got into a car and drove away without any signs of stress. It seemed they were heading to Mexico. Given the situation, Zwickle began to suspect that Paul might be involved in a murder. As a result, Paul and Tracy were placed on a nationwide wanted list. Investigators in Kansas identified 18-year-old Paul Nelson as the prime suspect. The police were particularly troubled by the $2,000 Paul had, which he used to flee. They wondered if he had robbed someone or committed another crime. Investigators were shocked and they examined Sandra's bank accounts. On March 26, her daughter, Tracy, withdrew money from her mother's account. While looking into this, detectives discovered that Tracy had gone to the bank with Paul and cashed a check with the teller. Tracy claimed that her mother had given her the money to buy a new car. This raised serious suspicions about her actions. A bank employee reported that Tracy and Paul were calm during the transaction and showed no signs of worry. Amid suspicions that Tracy may have been a hostage in a kidnapping, police now have new suspicions. It seemed Paul's friend, Zwickle, was telling the truth. Could Tracy actually be a willing participant in the crime instead of a hostage? To investigate further, they reached out to Tracy's best friend, Candace Keno. Candace revealed that on March 25, Tracy had called her to share that a serious conflict had erupted with her mother. Tracy's mother had taken the car key away from her and threatened to kick her out. This created evident hostility between them. Candace mentioned that following this incident, Tracy decided to run away with Paul and admitted this during their phone conversation. The officers' doubts were confirmed. It became clear that from the very beginning, no one had actually tried to keep Tracy as a hostage. The police confirmed that Tracy and Paul had crossed the border into Mexico and subsequently got lost. After some time, a United States Border Service officer informed the police that Tracy and Paul had re-entered the U.S. near El Paso. The reason for their return was unclear, but it was evident that they were in trouble. Efforts to locate the couple intensified. On April 8, Candace contacted investigators to report that she had spoken with Tracy on the phone. Candace provided the police with Tracy's phone number. Tracy and Paul was located on the outskirts of El Paso, and later, that day, investigators apprehended Paul. Candace agreed to make another call to help detectives pinpoint the location from which Tracy had called. Tracy and Paul was arrested and taken to the police station for questioning. Paul did not appear to be a dangerous gangster. He kept his eyes on the floor and trembled with fear. He explained the details of the attack, admitting that on the evening of the 25th, he had gone to the house Sandra's. Then, Tracy and Paul had devised an escape plan, and it was Tracy who proposed drastic measures. She wanted to kill her mother to prevent her from ever finding her. The next morning, Candace stopped by to pick up Tracy, and they left for school together. Meanwhile, Paul was hiding in the bedroom with a tree branch he intended to use as a weapon. He claimed he found it in the house and did not plan to kill Sandra. He only wanted to strike her so she would lose consciousness. However, the police were skeptical of his explanation. They questioned why he would sneak into the house and attack her if he didn't intend to kill her, knowing she could eventually regain consciousness and report him. It seemed clear to the investigators that his intention was murder, which would allow him to escape without being caught. Paul continued his story. He claimed that Sandra surprised him by opening the door and immediately began yelling and insulting him. In a fit of anger, he wrapped a cord around Sandra's neck and strangled her until she stopped breathing. Afterward, he covered she with a blanket and fled the scene. Meanwhile, Tracy, smiling, testified in the next room. Their accounts were similar, except for how much blame they placed on each other. Tracy asserted that she did not act alone. She claimed that she and Paul planned the murder together, but only Paul killed her mother. Tracy insisted that she had no role in the crime. She also revealed that the wooden figurine used in the murder was hidden in the backyard. The police later found the figurine there, along with Sandra's blood on it. The prosecutor's office was prepared to charge Tracy and Paul with first-degree murder. According to state law, the maximum penalty for this crime was life imprisonment. Paul's defense argued that he acted under Tracy's influence, claiming he should be guilty of manslaughter instead. Conversely, Tracy's lawyer argued that Paul was the instigator, as he was the one who strangled Sandra, while Tracy played a secondary role. The trial began on February 26, 1999, with both defense teams trying to downplay their clients' involvement in the horrific crime to lessen their possible sentences. During the trial, the young defendants, Tracy and Paul, displayed disrespectful behavior and laughed provocatively. Tracy refused to meet with her family, even though they wanted to discuss her involvement in Sandra's murder. Her brother, Chad, particularly wished to speak with her. On April 22, 1999, the court sentenced Tracy Miles and Paul Nelson to life in prison, with a minimum of 25 years before they can apply for parole. After the judge announced the sentence, Paul made an obscene gesture. Both Tracy and Paul expressed dissatisfaction with the verdict and showed no signs of remorse for their actions. In the future, Tracy and Paul will have the chance to request early release, but Sandra's relatives hope that this does not occur. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Aisling Murphy. Aisling Murphy, born in 1998, was the youngest of 3 siblings. Her family lived in Blue Ball, Ireland, a peaceful town about an hour's drive from Dublin. Aisling grew up in a loving environment, influenced by her father's passion for music, particularly the bagpipes and violin. Inspired by him, she began studying traditional Irish music. She joined a youth choir in school and later became part of an orchestra, performing folk music at various events across Ireland and Great Britain. She was talented, independent, and sociable, which allowed her to integrate well with her team and feel comfortable on stage. After graduating from school, Aisling quickly sought employment. She was determined to achieve complete independence from her parents, so she began searching for full-time job opportunities right after receiving her diploma. Despite her career ambitions, she continued to nurture her love for music. She often performed for her relatives during special family gatherings on weekends, which further strengthened their connections. Aisling wanted to create her own family someday, but first, she focused on establishing herself. She went to college and became a first-grade teacher at a school where she had previously studied. This moment in her life was very meaningful. The teachers and students appreciated Aisling for her energy, kindness, and creativity. Aisling was truly suited for this role due to her strong moral character. She made a smooth transition from being an excellent student to becoming a wonderful teacher. Aisling was friendly, well-mannered, sweet, and self-assured. During her first week of work, she taught music on weekends, showing her passion for her job and her enjoyment of working with children. At 28, she had been in a relationship with her boyfriend, Ryan, for over 6 years. They met when Aisling was just 15. Initially, their romance didn't last, and they broke up after a few months. However, they eventually reunited, realizing that they were too young when they first started dating as teenagers. Their feelings for each other reignited, and they fell deeply in love, often talking about their future, including marriage and children. They had planned a trip in 2 days, but unfortunately, it seemed their dreams would not come to fruition. Aisling finished her workday and planned to go for a run along the Grand Canal in Tullamore. This was a routine activity for her, as she enjoyed fitness and outdoor recreation. She loved walking or running in beautiful locations, so she often visited the canal when she could. The Grand Canal was a popular spot for runners, featuring a designated path for walking. It was usually busy, which made Aisling comfortable going there alone. After work, Aisling got ready for her run. She first went home to change her clothes and tell her mother about her schedule. Her mother reassured her daughter that she was old enough to take care of herself and that there was no danger in this. Aisling left, and that was the last time her mother saw her alive. About an hour after Aisling left home, 2 runners warming up along the Grand Canal called for help. They were running on one side of the canal and saw a man attacking a girl on the opposite bank. Since they didn't have mobile phones, they ran to the nearest payphone to report the incident. They informed the emergency dispatcher that they had witnessed a threatening man assaulting one of the female runners. The witnesses confirmed that the victim was still alive when the attacker dragged her into the bushes. She screamed and fought back, desperately trying to push him away, but she was clearly outmatched. The dispatchers sent police officers to the specified location. Upon arrival, the police and a witness found the body of a young woman at the canal. The young girl, who showed no signs of life, was found to have been severely beaten, as the caller had reported. She had been pulled off the paved road and into the bushes, where she suffered physical abuse. Her face and neck were covered in cuts, and her hair was matted with dried blood. Paramedics arrived and attempted to resuscitate her for 10 minutes, but they were unable to save her and confirmed her death. While the exact cause of death remained unclear, it was evident she had been beaten badly. The body of the murdered girl was sent for an autopsy, which revealed stab and cut wounds on her neck. A forensic expert identified 11 injuries, primarily on the right side of her neck, including a cut throat that rendered her unable to call for help. Signs of possible strangulation were also found. The victim was identified as Aisling Murphy. On her hands, there were deep cuts, likely sustained during a struggle. Keys were discovered near her body, and it was determined she had used them defensively, gripping them tightly in an effort to fight off her attacker. The weapon used in the attack did not inflict enough damage to prevent the criminal from continuing his assault. Aisling died from severe blood loss caused by multiple stab wounds to her neck, leading to her death within minutes. Near her body, police found sunglasses and a mobile phone in her jacket pocket. An abandoned bicycle was also found nearby, likely belonging to the attacker. The criminal had already fled the scene after harming his innocent victim. The brutality of the attack was shocking, especially since it occurred in broad daylight in a crowded area with witnesses. 2 runners who were in the vicinity witnessed the crime. They observed both the attack and the assailant. They provided vital information to the police. The first witness, Emma, reported that she was walking her dog by the Grand Canal when she noticed a girl jogging. She saw a man on a bright green bicycle closely following the jogger. Initially, Emma thought they might be running together because the cyclist stayed so close to the girl. She described the cyclist as looking like a migrant, not Irish. He had yellowish skin, a short haircut, and was wearing a black tracksuit with red logos. Later, Emma met another witness, Jenna, and together they witnessed the cyclist attack the girl. The attack appeared sudden and unprovoked. Jenna witnessed the attack and provided a detailed account. Her description matched that of another witness, who reported that the victim screamed, threatening the attacker, but then suddenly fell silent. This silence was caused by a wound to Aisling's neck that severely severed her vocal cords. Later, Jenna screamed loudly, threatening to call the police. Despite the threats, the attacker did not let go of the victim. Police found a green bicycle near the trail that belonged to the attacker. Meanwhile, police gathered more evidence and discovered that Aisling had been wearing a fitness tracker while running. The device recorded her body metrics, including speed, distance, and heart rate, helping to clarify the details surrounding her death. The data showed that Aisling started running at 2:51 p.m., and before that, GPS records showed she had parked her bike near the canal. After that, her pulse was around 100 beats per minute, indicating she was in an active phase. She maintained this heart rate until 15:21, during which she ran approximately 3 kilometers. However, after 15:21, her heart rate changed. The Aisling experienced erratic fluctuations, and GPS data showed she was standing still at that time. This was clearly when she was attacked, and by 15:31, her heart had stopped beating. The next step for the police was to review footage from surveillance cameras in the area. Police identified the locations of all recording devices, hoping to find video that would show the suspect, the victim, and the attack itself. Police checked surveillance cameras, focusing on the time frame between 12:25 and 16:05, and were able to identify a man who matched the witness description exactly. It appeared that he was moving randomly along the roads. They determined that this man had appeared long before Aisling's arrival and was using a bicycle identical to the one found at the crime scene. The prime suspect was wearing a black hoodless jacket and sweatpants with stripes down the side, and also had a red logo on his clothes, as Emma described. He had been following a woman in a dark burgundy jacket but was later spotted by her. He had been looking at the victim with interest, but for some unknown reason he quickly fell behind. In footage from another camera, the suspect stops at 1:53 p.m. He reaches into his pocket and pulls out an object. He is seen holding and twisting something in his hand, but the poor quality of the footage makes it difficult to determine what it is. Police suspect he pulled out a knife, which he then used to kill Aisling. A forensic expert concluded that Aisling was killed with a small serrated knife, as the wounds had jagged edges. The man was seen again on surveillance footage at around 2:55 p.m., just as Aisling began training on the trail. Police discovered that the suspect had been wandering around the area, apparently looking for victims, as he occasionally focused on different women. He followed these women at a distance but lost interest until he came across Aisling, whom he decided to attack. Unfortunately, the surveillance cameras did not capture high-quality images that could help identify the criminal. Hours after the attack, a suspect was arrested based on information from witnesses. The suspect, Griot Keegan, is a 39-year-old Romanian immigrant who has lived in Ireland for 23 years and has no criminal record. He matched the person seen on surveillance cameras and found near the scene of the attack. At the police station, he vehemently denied any involvement in the incident. While police were questioning him, police obtained a search warrant and thoroughly searched his house, but found no evidence of his guilt. Griot maintained that there had been a mistake. He provided an alibi that was verified. He had been in a store making a purchase, which was confirmed by his receipt and surveillance footage. After that, he was seen walking along the south bank of the canal while the murder occurred on the north bank. The suspect's fingerprints and DNA samples were collected to compare with skin particles found under the Aisling's nails and on the bicycle, but there was no match. This confirmed that he was not involved in the crime. He was cleared of all suspicions and released. However, for some time, he and his family received threats as local residents still viewed him as a murderer. He was temporarily provided with alternative housing, and the police issued a public statement clarifying that Griot was not connected to the crime. Only after this did the public stop harassing him. This case received wide publicity across the country. The local community was outraged by the attack on Aisling and called on the police to quickly identify and arrest the perpetrators responsible for the tragic death of a talented young woman in broad daylight. For days, police have been trying to piece together clues, and the situation has taken a surprising turn. On the evening following the attack, a 30-year-old man named Josef Puska was admitted to a hospital in Dublin with abdominal injuries. Josef was originally from a small village in Slovakia. He left school at 16 without finishing his education and spent most of his life working as a laborer in the Czech Republic. Although he faced challenges in his lifestyle and at school, Josef was not involved with bad influences, had no criminal record, and was generally seen as a positive individual. In 2015, he moved to Dublin, Ireland, where he and his wife planned to settle permanently. He continued his work as a builder, and during their time there, they welcomed 5 children. Everything seemed to be going well until he suffered a back injury at work. After his recovery, Josef found that he could not return to his previous activities. The back injury was more severe than he had anticipated, leading him to receive disability benefits. He spent a significant amount of time in the hospital, and afterward, he relied on state support. The financial situation was tight, so his wife had to work. Josef had limited proficiency in Irish and struggled with English, which made it difficult for him to communicate with medical staff. When he went to the hospital the day after Aisling's murder, he needed an interpreter for assistance. Thanks to the interpreter, Josef explained that he was in Blanchardstown the previous day, January 12th. He took a taxi there and noticed he was being followed as soon as he arrived, but he did not think much of it since it was daytime. Suddenly, the attackers assaulted him, stabbing him multiple times in the stomach before they ran away. He managed to get home, where he informed his family about the incident and called for an ambulance. Doctors discovered cuts on Josef's hands, signs of defensive wounds. He had multiple stab wounds in his abdomen and received painkillers before a 2-hour surgery. The surgery was completed around 10 o'clock. The doctors concluded that Josef's injuries were from stab wounds inflicted by a small knife, but they were not life-threatening. He remained in the hospital for several days to recover. As part of their protocol, the doctors informed the police about the incident. officers came to speak with Yosef, who was the victim of another attack. Police suspected that the same criminal who attacked Aisling might also be responsible for Yosef's injuries. During the conversation, Yosef's behavior became increasingly awkward and suspicious. He seemed confused, struggled to recall simple details, and appeared noticeably nervous. Police began to question whether this unemployed man could be connected to Aisling's murder. The next day, the police returned to the hospital to continue questioning and gather more details. This time, Yosef gave more specific answers. He explained that he had taken a taxi to the city to meet a woman he had met online. Yosef then revealed that he was married with 5 children but did not want his wife to know about his secret encounters. It was later discovered that he had registered on several dating websites and was regularly seeing different women. His wife remained unaware of his affair, as Yosef was very careful to keep it a secret. The police asked Yosef if he owned a bicycle. He replied that he had a green bicycle that he had used for a long time. However, when they inquired whether he had been riding it on the day of the murder, Yosef started to stutter and claimed that his bicycle had been stolen over 2 weeks ago. He had not reported the theft to the police, which raised suspicions. Yosef then appeared increasingly anxious, prompting police to leave his hospital room. The police also discovered that he had been near the canal around 6 p.m. that same day. They obtained a warrant to search his apartment, allowing them to collect his clothing and mobile phone for forensic analysis. They called Yosef to inform him of this. Sensing something was amiss, he directly asked the police, through an interpreter, if he was a suspect. The officers reassured him that they were merely trying to clarify the situation and needed to conduct an examination. This conversation occurred over the phone. After the police answered, the Yosef paused for a long moment. Then he turned to the translator and asked him to accurately relay his words to the police officer. Yosef admitted that he had killed the girl by the canal, but he insisted that it was unintentional and an accident. Later, the Yosef addressed the police directly. He explained that he was riding his bicycle along a path when he encountered an unfamiliar girl. He had a knife in his hand and accidentally cut her in the neck after losing his balance. She became angry, which frightened Yosef, and he claimed he struck her in the stomach with an object that resembled a knife. He said he tried to remain calm, hoping the girl would settle down. However, she began screaming and threatening him even more, forcing Yosef to defend himself. He then attacked her, repeatedly stabbing her in the neck with his knife. She fought back desperately, but he was able to overpower her. The police were taken aback by his phone confession, finding the story hard to believe. It seemed implausible that Yosef could accidentally stab the victim in the neck before she attacked him. They questioned how Aisling could have had a knife. Yosef expressed fear of retaliation. He believed that if Aisling's friends and relatives learned of the incident, they might harm his children and wife. He asked the police to keep the names of his family members confidential. The police assured Yosef that he would not face prosecution as he would soon be arrested and put on trial. After being discharged from hospital, he was immediately arrested for murder. Afterward, the Yosef changed his story and refused to confess. Despite this, the prosecutor's office viewed him as the only person who could have harmed Aisling that day. They decided to seek the maximum punishment for the murderer. The initial trial date was set for June 2023, but there were several delays, and it wasn't until October 2023 that the prosecution presented the case to the jury. During the trial, prosecutors played surveillance footage showing an attacker who looked like Yosef cycling along a path near the canal for hours before targeting Aisling. His actions were typical of a predator looking for prey. Forensic experts found traces of DNA under Aisling's fingernails, suggesting she fought back and injured her attacker. DNA from tissue samples matched Yosef, and his fingerprints were found on a green bicycle. All witnesses who saw the attacker that day identified him as Yosef. New evidence emerged during the investigation, particularly from one of Josef's friends, a Slovakian bus driver. On the night of January 12, while working, he encountered Josef, who had severe scratches on his stomach. Concerned, the driver offered Josef a ride home. Josef mentioned he had gotten into a fight but did not provide details about the incident. During the drive, the bus driver repeatedly questioned Josef about what had happened, but Josef avoided giving clear answers and kept holding his stomach, which was bleeding. The driver grew increasingly worried, suspecting that the injuries might be linked to the ethnic cleansing events happening at that time, as there were widespread expressions of hatred against other nationalities. To deflect his friend's questions, Josef concocted a story about being attacked by a masked man, claiming he couldn't identify the attacker because he hadn't seen his face before and didn't know him. Josef attempted to portray himself as a hero, claiming he had seen a masked stranger attacking a woman near the canal. Josef claimed he was stabbed multiple times as he tried to approach the bleeding girl. He became frightened when he realized what had happened and then fled. Despite being suspected of murder, he began to insist that he was actually the savior, having been injured in a fight with the real attacker. However, this new account does not clarify how his DNA was found under Aisling's fingernails or his fingerprints on the green bike he left behind. Josef's defense argued that his false confession about the attack on Aisling resulted from the painkillers he received in the hospital, which caused him to feel euphoric and led him to speak to himself. Josef stated that he was under the influence of these drugs when the police began their interrogation. However, doctors who treated Josef contradicted this claim. They stated that he only received a minimal dose of the medication, meaning it could not have significantly affected him by the time he made his confession. The prosecution highlighted that Josef had changed his testimony multiple times, making his statements unreliable. However, this posed a challenge for the prosecution because Josef had no history of violence, especially against women. There were no indications of aggression or cruelty in his behavior, and he had no connection to Aisling, raising questions about his motive for the attack. The prosecution argued that the incident was not a result of personal issues. The trial lasted 3 weeks, after which a jury of 12 members returned their verdict. They deliberated for 3 hours before finding Josef Puska guilty of the murder of Aisling Murphy. As a result, he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The circumstances surrounding Aisling's murder shocked the nation. Just days after the tragedy, protests were held across Ireland in support of the victim's family, and the case shocked the nation. During the investigation, police determined that Josef had attacked Aisling without any apparent motive. He did not know her. He appeared to be a predator who had been searching for a victim for hours. Unfortunately, Aisling fell victim to a monster. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Ramsey Scrivo. In January 2014, Donna Scrivo lived in the charming town of St. Clair Shores, Michigan, with her eldest son, Ramsey. He grew up in an environment of strict control from his mother, which often led to problems. Ramsey, born in 1981, had a younger brother who. Both boys attended a Catholic school, and their parents had high aspirations for them. In 1999, Ramsey graduated from college and began working at an accounting firm. However, by the end of 2000, he was fired, which was the beginning of a series of job losses. Ramsey then tried to join the family business. It seemed like Ramsey had finally found his place and things were going well. Unfortunately, the family soon faced a tragedy when the father fell ill and passed away. On January 25, 2014, around 6:30 p.m., 32-year-old Ramsey left home, telling his mother he was going out for cigarettes. That was the last time she saw him alive. At first, no one suspected anything was wrong. He was an adult who could go out with friends or visit places on his own. So, no alarm was raised immediately. However, the next morning, Donna realized Ramsey hadn't returned home. When he didn't answer her calls, she began to worry. After waiting another day without any news, on January 27th, she decided to report his disappearance to the police. After filing the report, Donna continued to call Ramsey's mobile phone, becoming increasingly anxious with each attempt. The cold weather added to her worry. If Ramsey was indeed missing, he could be at risk of freezing if he were outside. It was crucial to act quickly. Soon after, a police officer reached out to Ramsey's family. Donna explained that Ramsey was dealing with issues related to an attack on a friend at a bar. She also expressed concern about Ramsey's struggles with illegal substances, alcohol, and mental health, which required him to undergo regular drug and alcohol testing. The police became concerned about Ramsey's disappearance, suspecting he might have run into trouble again. Donna explained that her son had left to buy cigarettes and didn't have any plans for the night. She noted that he took a wallet containing 2 credit cards and a driver's license with him. To trace Ramsey's whereabouts, the officer decided to review the card transactions. As the investigation progressed, it became clear that Ramsey had not made any purchases that evening, casting doubt on whether he had reached the store at all. This prompted police to track Ramsey's mobile phone. They soon found it on a neighbor's property. When they examined the scene, the police retrieved the phone, but the neighbor was unaware of how it had ended up in his yard or what had happened to Ramsey. The investigation revealed that the Ramsey's mobile phone was checked, and it showed no record of the calls that Donna claimed to have made before and after her son's disappearance. This contradiction raised additional suspicions with the police, leading them to question the validity of the call records. Police then approached neighbors to gather more information about Ramsey and his mother. This investigation revealed that neighbors had not seen Ramsey for several days, which contradicted his mother's claims. Another disturbing detail noted by neighbors was the strong smell of cleaning products coming from Ramsey's home, which was detected the day before Donna reported Ramsey missing. Based on their experience, they found these signs very suspicious. There seemed to be some unusual elements surrounding the Ramsey family. Donna Scrivo, born in 1954 in Dallas, Texas, dreamed of becoming a nurse since she was a child. Her dream came true when she met Daniel in August 1971. They got married, and 2 months later, their eldest son, Ramsey, was born. The family then moved to Donna's house in Michigan City, SN Clear Shores, where their youngest son was later born. They lived a modest life and maintained good relationships with their relatives and neighbors for many years. The family's first major challenge arose in 2003 when Donna suffered a heart attack. Remarkably, she survived the surgery, but her health began to decline afterwards. She became forgetful and anxious, ultimately having to leave her job as a nurse. Nevertheless, she had pursued her passion for nursing for 12 years before these events unfolded. Donna grew increasingly concerned that her son, Ramsey, was struggling with mental health issues. He was severely depressed and unable to manage his anger. They sought help at a psychiatric hospital, where he was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. After that diagnosis, Donna became reluctant to let Ramsey go far from home, fearing he might endanger himself or others. This concern intensified because he refused to take the medication prescribed by his doctor, insisting he didn't want to experience certain side effects. Unfortunately, this decision hindered his ability to combat his illness, and his condition continued to deteriorate, with symptoms becoming more pronounced. Ramsey was convinced that someone was poisoning his food and drinks. He even believed a nanochip had been implanted in his tooth to track him. After getting into a fight, he suffered a serious head injury when he fell and hit the concrete. Following this incident, he experienced worsening symptoms. He became increasingly aggressive, and his alcohol abuse only intensified the situation. Eventually, he became a danger to himself and others, landing on probation after an altercation with a friend at a bar. His condition worsened when Ramsey's father, Neil, passed away. Neil was an important figure in Ramsey's life, as they developed a deep bond that resembled that of best friends. He was the only one who could control Ramsey's dangerous behavior. At that time, Ramsey was taking his medication consistently and his condition had stabilized. Neil had acted as a buffer between Ramsey's mental health struggles and his wife, who sought to control every aspect of their lives. When Neil died, tensions between Ramsey and his mother increased. Ramsey began using morphine left over from his late father. And during this time, his mental decline became more apparent. Donna was concerned for her safety, so she sought hospitalization for her son at a psychiatric clinic, where he was later diagnosed with psychosis. While he was in the hospital, she also worked to establish legal guardianship over him. This allowed the doctors to manage his medication, leading to a quick improvement in Ramsey's condition. After he was discharged, he returned to live with Donna, but their relationship began to deteriorate over time. Eventually, a fire broke out in their home due to faulty wiring. The fire started in the basement where Ramsey was sleeping. Donna evacuated the house and called the fire department, but Ramsey was still in the room that was on fire. They were able to save him, but after investigating, the circumstances surrounding the fire raised suspicions. However, no evidence of premeditation was ever found. Ultimately, they could no longer live in the damaged house, which required significant repairs. So, they decided to rent a different house temporarily. Unfortunately, this only made things worse. Ramsey, who was 32 years old, was still under his mother's strict guardianship. She had formalized this guardianship through the court. However, by June 2014, Ramsey went to court to end the guardianship, which his mother had maintained for about 6 months. Life had taken a toll on Ramsey, and Donna's efforts to control everything ultimately led him to move out. By the time the tragedy occurred, Ramsey had been living independently for a while. Donna then went to Texas to visit relatives. She considered the possibility of returning to her hometown, possibly with her son. However, her son, Ramsey, went missing on January 27, 2014, and Donna reported Ramsey missing to the police. Days passed without any clues until January 30th, when a witness came forward. While driving along a snow-covered road in China Township, she noticed something dark on the side of the road. When she stopped to check, she discovered intestines scattered across a field, covered in blood. The sight shocked the girl. Nearby, she noticed a bag, and when she opened it, she discovered a human head inside. There were also other horrifying items. Terrified, she quickly called the police. When the police arrived, they were equally horrified by the discovery and immediately began searching the area. In addition to the head and intestines they found, they later found the torso, but no other remains were found. Both the head and torso were mutilated, and the victim was unrecognizable. While the police were working to identify the body they had discovered, they received a tip from a local resident the very next morning. In one of the city's trash cans, several suspicious items were found packed in garbage bags, including burnt clothing and an ID card. At that point, the police had no idea who the victim was, and the items they found were in such poor condition due to fire damage that they could not read the documents. It was clear that the deceased was a man. But even before the lab tests could begin, reports of other disturbing discoveries began to emerge in the city. More human remains were found, along with a bloody electric saw and 4 blades used to dismember the victim. In a trash bin, there were also clothes and a Coca-Cola bottle. By this point, the forensic expert had completed the analysis and autopsy of the body, including collecting fingerprints for comparison with existing databases. Eventually, it was confirmed that the deceased was 32-year-old Ramsey Scrivo, whose disappearance had recently been reported by Donna. The cause of death was established as strangulation. Further blood tests reveal the dangerous level of antidepressants and Xanax in his system, 4 times higher than the prescribed dosage. This overdose could have contributed to his death, but police were already aware that his mother, Donna, had been directly overseeing his medication intake. The investigation into Ramsey's disappearance quickly shifted to a murder case. Police began interviewing his friends, acquaintances, and neighbors. A witness claimed to have seen a woman in an SUV tossing the bag away right in front of him, but he could not identify her or provide any detailed information, nor could he remember the car's license plate. However, police went to the location where the suspect was seen dumping trash. They found nearby surveillance cameras and requested the footage. After reviewing the recordings, they were able to get a clear image of the car and the woman driving it. The woman turned out to be Donna Scrivo, Ramsey's mother, who had transported her son's dismembered remains in her 1990 Chevrolet Bezier to the city dumpsters. The police were shocked by the unfolding events and found some of Donna's actions suspicious, but they did not initially believe she could have killed her son. Nevertheless, an arrest warrant was issued, and Donna was quickly taken into custody. She was brought to the police station for questioning. At first, Donna did not provide any useful information. She claimed to have mental health issues and that her son had taken one's own life. However, this was clearly a lie, as his body had been dismembered and she had taken steps to dispose of the remains. The police did not believe her story. They suspected that the conflict between Donna and Ramsey had escalated, causing her to lose control. As a result, Donna was charged as the prime suspect in the murder of her 32-year-old son, facing charges of first-degree murder with aggravating circumstances. It was clear that she was trying to mislead the investigation. Police obtained search warrants for the Ramsey family's apartment and the Donna's car. When they first entered the apartment, they were hit by a strong smell of cleaning products that stung their eyes. It was clear that the Donna was attempting to clean the crime scene to eliminate evidence. However, despite her efforts, police discovered several blood droplets in the bathroom, as well as traces on the corridor wall, the porch, and the entrance railings. Notably, there were no cars in the parking lot. Interestingly, she was attempting to donate her car to a local charity in Detroit, and Donna had already managed to do the same with Ramsey's car. Nevertheless, the police tracked down both vehicles for inspection. In the Donna's car, they found numerous blood stains, which were sent for analysis and confirmed to belong to Ramsey. Locals learned about the crime through news and social media, and were all shocked by the incident. Gradually, more witnesses came forward to the police station to share their stories. During the investigation, police determined that Donna had purchased an electric saw and saw blade at a nearby hardware store on January 26. The electric saw was eventually found in a trash bag along with Ramsey's remains. Next, Patricia, a neighbor, reported that she saw Donna carrying 3 black trash bags to her silver car. All of the neighbors were later present in court. The lawyer claimed that his client, Donna Scrivo, was insane and requested a psychiatric evaluation. However, the psychiatrists who assessed her determined that she was sane and fit to stand trial. The trial began in May 2015, and by then, she appeared before the jury, insisting on her innocence and pleading for her release. The prosecutor presented evidence that Donna had administered Xanax to the murder victim, with the dosage being 4 times higher than the recommended amount. Donna had received a 90-day supply of the drugs in early January, and less than 30 days later, during a police search of her apartment, only 1 pill remained in the package. This showed that Ramsey had taken the rest of the medication. The prosecution argued that this proved that Donna had intentionally given her son an increased dose, which was potentially dangerous. After Ramsey's death, his biological mother, Donna, made the decision to dispose of his body. In a horrific act, she dismembered him in her bathroom and placed the remains in garbage bags. To avoid being caught, she took out several bags each day, discarding them in different trash bins. However, she disagreed with the prosecution's testimony and decided to present her own testimony before the jury. According to Donna, on January 25th, a masked man broke into their apartment, likely intending to kill her son. At the time, she was in the basement doing laundry and did not hear anything unusual or see the intruder. When she came out of the basement, she found the front door open. Hearing noises from Ramsey's room, she went upstairs and discovered her son dead, tied up next to his bed, with a strong man with a menacing appearance standing nearby. The intruder did not harm her. Instead, he commanded her to dispose of the body. Feeling she had no choice, she complied. The criminal stayed with her for the next 5 days, closely watching her as she followed his orders. Donna reported that she cleaned the room and dealt with the remains under his watchful eye, and he only left after confirming that she had completed his instructions. During this time, Donna stated that she was handcuffed to a bed and that the intruder seldom let her go, even when there were things to do. Although she was confined, she claimed she didn't contact the police because she was scared, a claim many found unbelievable. This raised several questions about her story. Why did the supposed attacker not kill her? Why did he stay in her home for 5 days while controlling her? Critics questioned why she didn't try to escape when the intruder was distracted, leading some to speculate that he might not have been real or that her story was made up. As the trial progressed, the jury had to decide whether Donna's fears were genuine or if she was fabricating her story after her arrest. Throughout the lengthy legal process, she frequently mentioned the mysterious masked man who allegedly held her captive, despite the increasing evidence against her. The investigation ultimately did not find any DNA or direct links to a possible criminal regarding her son's remains, nor was there any of her blood or fingerprints on the dismembered body. Donna's defense team worked hard to prove her innocent, highlighting the absence of direct evidence linking her to Ramsey's body. As the trial progressed, it grew increasingly controversial, and the jury went to deliberate on the presented evidence. On June 23, 2015, after thorough deliberation, the jury found 61-year-old Donna Scrivo guilty of first-degree murder with aggravating factors. She received a life sentence without the possibility of parole. To this day, Donna is in a Michigan state prison. She has consistently maintained her innocence, but all of her appeals have been denied. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Ellen Greenberg. Ellen Greenberg was born in New York on June 23, 1993, as the only child of Joshua and Sandy Greenberg. At the time of the events, she was 27 years old and living in Philadelphia. Ellen grew up in a family filled with love and was a cheerful, outgoing girl. In high school, she played softball and golf, excelling as a competitive athlete. She was well-liked and had many friends. Her mother said that she was a special person, able to connect people with each other. After graduating from college, Ellen earned a degree in communications from the University of Pennsylvania. Even so, she felt this was not her true passion. As a result, she took evening classes at the university and eventually earned a teaching degree. After completing her studies, she quickly found a job as a first-grade teacher in Philadelphia. In 2008, Ellen met Samuel Goldberg, the son of a famous family in the area. They started dating soon after. Deeply in love, they soon decided to live together. By 2011, they were engaged and planning to marry in August. Ellen was thrilled and joyfully prepared for the wedding, trying on her dress and sending out invitations. She had no idea that incident would soon take a strange and unexpected turn. On January 26, 2011, while Ellen was at work, Philadelphia had a major snowstorm, prompting the school to close early. Ellen returned to the apartment she shared with her fiancé, Samuel. At around 5 p.m., Samuel went to the gym. he unaware it would be the last time he saw Ellen alive. When he returned at 5:45 p.m., he found the apartment door locked from the inside. He knocked repeatedly, called Ellen's name, phoned her multiple times, and sent 9 text messages, but received no response. Then, he asked the security guard for help to break down the door, but the guard refused, citing rules against leaving post. Determined, he broke down the door himself. Inside, he discovered a horrific scene. Ellen was sitting on the kitchen floor, leaning against the cabinets, with multiple wounds. He immediately called 911. The operator instructed him to check if Ellen was breathing and to perform cardiopulmonary resuscitation. However, he noticed a knife stuck in her chest, preventing him from starting resuscitation. Tragically, Ellen had already passed away. When the police arrived to inspect the scene, they found that the apartment's entrance had not been forced, and inside, everything appeared to be in order, with no signs of a struggle. The door was locked from the inside, and the latch was secured in the usual way until Samuel broke it down, making it unlikely that an intruder had entered. The police also observed that Ellen's hands had no defensive wounds. Despite her multiple injuries, it seemed improbable that she had inflicted them on herself. Nevertheless, waiting for the forensic examination results, the police concluded that Ellen had ended her life, even though there was no note explaining her actions. Additionally, there were fruits on the kitchen table, indicating that Ellen might have been planning to make a fruit salad when she supposedly decided to end her life. The police took Samuel to the station to provide testimony. By this time, Ellen's parents had received the sad news over the phone. They lived in Harrisburg, a 2-hour drive away. When they learned that their only daughter had passed away, they completely collapsed. The very next day, information about Ellen's death has changed. The autopsy revealed she had 20 wounds, 10 on the front and 10 on the neck from the back. Medical examiners emphasized that these injuries showed that this was a murder. She also had bruises on various parts of her body, both recent and older, making it hard to believe she could inflict neck and head wounds on herself from behind. Especially because at least 2 of these wounds were almost fatal and left her unconscious. Additionally, it takes a great deal of force to cause these injuries, especially head injuries. She was found with a knife stuck in her chest after already sustaining 19 injuries. Could she have done all of this by herself? Despite the evidence that has been found, the police disagreed with autopsy officers' conclusion. Authorities announced that Ellen ended her life. They came to this conclusion because they found no signs of anyone else being there. The door was locked from the inside and the neighbors heard no strange sounds, only Samuel's screams. Additionally, DNA analysis of the knife revealed only Ellen's fingerprints. The bruises on her were explained by the police as injuries from playing sports, even though she had not participated in any sports for several years. Doctors also checked Ellen's mental health and learned from her parents that recently, she has been dealing with anxiety. She had been prescribed 2 medications, both known to have side effects that may cause negative thoughts or behaviors. However, her psychiatrist, Len, stated that she showed no signs of end-her-life thoughts. 2 weeks before the incident, when they met, she seemed fine. In addition, the psychiatrist said had never heard Ellen say that anyone had treated her cruelly. Her family also confirmed this. They described Ellen as a good-natured and cheerful. Her loved ones couldn't believe she would harm herself, as she was happy, preparing for her upcoming wedding, and had even tried on her dress and sent out invitations just days before the incident. Ellen's mother and friends admit that she has been feeling anxious and stressed due to work and wedding preparations. However, they consider this to be normal. The thought that she would harm herself just before her wedding was completely out of character. There was a conflict between the forensic medical examination, which ruled it as murder, and the police, who believed Ellen harmed herself. To resolve this, the doctor decided to send the sample from Ellen's spine to a neurologist at the Forensic Medical Examination Bureau. This was to verify the cause of death. Because if one of her severe neck wounds had penetrated deep enough to reach the spinal cord, causing paralysis, she wouldn't have been able to inflict further wounds. This indicated that someone else was responsible for Ellen's death. 3 months after the incident, the medical examiner retracted his murder hypothesis, suggesting instead that Ellen's neck wounds were not severe enough to cause paralysis and that she could have inflicted them on herself. Ellen's parents were not given a clear explanation for this change in the investigation's direction. They described Ellen as squeamish, noting that she avoided even piercing her ears a second time due to her low pain tolerance, making it hard for them to believe she could harm herself. Despite this, the authorities closed the case. Refusing to accept this decision, Ellen's family decided to pursue their own investigation. They hired top experts, including forensic specialists Kirill Klin and Henry Lee, to consider the evidence and the autopsy report. These experts cast doubt on the police investigation report that Ellen did this to herself. In 2012, Henry noted that the likelihood of murder Ellen is significant. Forensic pathologist Cyril Wecht pointed out that statistically, women rarely use sharp objects to end her life and seldom harm themselves through clothing. On the other hand, Bren, a seasoned detective, investigated Ellen's death. After reviewing the footage, Bren claimed to notice that the bloodstains did not match the position in which Ellen was found, as she was sitting and leaning against the kitchen cabinets. However, there was a trail of blood running horizontally from her nose to her ear, and the blood splatter on her shoes indicated that she was standing when she suffered the injuries. All of this led he to assume that the scene of the incident and the position of the body had been altered. Although Ellen's parents tried, the lawyer failed to change the version of incident, as it would have been necessary to present more compelling evidence. Therefore, the case did not progress and remained unchanged until 2015. Andre, an assistant attorney, did not officially take on the case. However, he was intrigued by the unusual circumstances and decided to review the file to understand what drove Ellen to her actions. Ellen's fiancé, Samuel, found her, and he told the police that the door was locked from the inside, which forced him to kick it open. Andre noted in a photograph from the scene that the lock was a simple hotel-style latch. This type of latch can be locked from both the inside and the outside by turning a screw. An analyst mentioned that this kind of latch typically cannot be broken by a kick without dislodging the door from its frame. Yet, the only damage observed on the door was a missing screw. Additionally, the police considered the fact that Ellen had no defensive wounds. It was unclear in which order her injuries occurred, but the final one was undoubtedly to the heart, where the knife was found. If one of the neck wounds had damaged her bone marrow, she would not have had any opportunity to defend herself. One of Ellen's head wounds, which indicated she was attacked from behind, caught Andre's attention. He raised these concerns with the forensic expert, who said a neurologist had examined Ellen and found no injury. He then asked for an official report to confirm there was no spinal injury, only to be told that no such report existed, it had been lost, suggesting it was more of a rumor that no one had substantiated. At the time, there was no neurologist in the Forensic Medical Examination Bureau, so Dr. Adams was brought in. She allegedly examined Ellen's spine and found no damage. However, it later emerged that no record existed of Dr. Adams being asked to perform this examination. In a 2018 interview, Dr. Adams claims that she did not examine Ellen's spine. Following this, Andre contacted a private investigator for the Greenberg family and recommended hiring a private neurologist. He discovered that Ellen's spine sample was still held at the Forensic Bureau, which seemed unnecessary. The family took this advice and hired Dr. Ross. He concluded in a report that Ellen's spinal cord was damaged by 2 severe wounds on her neck, making it impossible for her to inflict further injuries on herself. At the same time, Andre realized that the data the police had was provided by Samuel, Ellen's fiancé, who was at the scene. This was the only account of what happened in the apartment. Samuel said he had not been with Ellen for 45 minutes, and when he returned, he couldn't open the door. Neighbors said they heard Samuel screaming and calling Ellen's name through the door. Samuel said he became worried and started calling Ellen on the phone, sending her 9 text messages. When he got no response, he went downstairs to ask the building security guard if had any tools to open the door, but the guard refused to help. Later, Samuel claimed he went downstairs several more times, trying to persuade the guard to help him break down the door. In his official statement to the police, he said the guard was with him when he kicked the door open and entered. However, the guard told both the police and Ellen's family that he never left his post and did not accompany Samuel into the apartment. Additionally, the guard noted that Samuel, who claimed to have been at the gym, was wearing boots instead of sneakers. On the other hand, Samuel called 911 at 6:33 p.m., which means that an hour had already passed since he returned to the apartment and attempted to contact Ellen. This is very strange when analyzed. Let's think, he goes to the gym for half an hour. Later, when he returned home, he called Ellen to open the door, but she did not answer him. He shouts her name, tries to call her on the phone and sends her 9 text messages. How long should it take to realize that something is wrong? 10 to 20, maybe 30 minutes, but not an hour. Another strange thing that Andre discovered is that Samuel, before calling 911, made 2 calls, one to his parents and another to his uncle, who is a lawyer. Moreover, they arrived at the scene before the emergency services, and it was Samuel's parents who informed Ellen's parents about what happened. One thing is clear, no one would react in the same way as Samuel. Anyone would ask for help as soon as possible to try to save the life of the person they love, right? Andre listened to Samuel's call to 911, and he was surprised to hear Samuel speak in a calm tone. Even as Samuel said things like my God, his fiancée, there is blood, his voice remained steady. When the emergency services worker asked him to describe the situation, he ignored the request and instead talked about his trip to the gym and his return home. When they instructed him to perform CPR, Samuel asked, "Does he really need to do this?" After spending 2 or 3 minutes supposedly performing CPR, he suddenly told them that he had just found a knife stuck in Ellen's chest. Remarkably, although he was beside her the whole time, but before that he had not seen it. This was no small tool, but a 10-inch long meat cleaver. It was clearly visible. After discovering it, he told them that Ellen must have fallen on the knife. Following this, Samuel was taken to the police station to give a statement. He did so only in the presence of his lawyer and provided a very brief statement. After that, he refused to speak to detectives again, despite their repeated attempts to question him. It seemed there was no way to get him to talk. These things made Ellen's family believe that she was murdered. A neurologist hired by Ellen's family discovered a bone marrow perforation and also found signs of strangulation and bruising. However, many researchers reviewed the footage at the scene and were surprised to see only a small amount of blood. Ellen had 20 injuries, which raised suspicions that the crime scene may have been tampered with. However, the investigation did not conduct any crucial tests. The police did not even examine the trash after arriving at the scene. They simply observed and assumed she had died naturally and without protecting the scene. Additionally, the day after this tragic incident, Samuel's uncle, cousin, and brother visited the apartment, supposedly to retrieve a suit. They took Samuel's laptop, Ellen's laptop, and her cell phone. The police only seized these items on January 29th, 3 days later. Upon examination, the laptops showed search queries about ending one's life. Yet, the official report filed in April 2011 did not mention these searches. Ellen's parents and friends slightly changed their views about Samuel after the incident. They never labeled he as a suspect or culprit, but they did have doubts. They realized they had noticed changes in Ellen's behavior weeks before the incident but didn't think much of it at the time. Her friends observed that she started consulting Samuel on every decision, which was unusual for her. Ellen, once a happy girl, had become worried and insecure. One day, she told her parents she wanted to quit her job and move back home. She assuring them it had nothing to do with Samuel and she was fine. Her parents told her she could come home whenever she needed and advised her to seek help for her anxiety. In 2019, Deputy Coroner and Dean of the Faculty of Health Sciences Gregory McDonald presented a report supporting the police's version of incident. He stated that Ellen had inflicted superficial wounds on herself, as people often start with shallow cuts before going deeper. However, the deep wounds and marks that looked like signs of an attack also made him suspicious. After the incident, Samuel continued to contact the Greenberg family for a year, but their relationship eventually faded. He later sent them an email announcing his wedding. Today, he is married, has 2 children and lives a normal life, completely unrelated to the Greenberg family. The Greenberg family and their attorney have filed a lawsuit against the medical examiner who performed the autopsy and the Philadelphia County Coroner's Office to change and explain why the case was closed. In May 2020, a Philadelphia court finally supported their claim. The family hopes to receive the case file, which they were previously denied access to. There is also a CCTV video from the building. It does not show anything unusual. It only confirms the time Samuel left and returned to the apartment. They also asked to see the 911 call recording. These procedures were delayed, and the trial was rescheduled for 2021. If they win, the case will be reclassified and investigated as a murder. However, due to the time that has passed and the investigation's shortcomings, many clues have been lost forever, such as the luminol test. The Pennsylvania Attorney General's office closed the case in July 2022. The case has been transferred to the Chester County District Attorney's Office, which has assigned new investigators and a prosecutor to take over. This change was supported by Ellen's parents. They have always maintained that their daughter did not end her life. Welcome back to our channel. Today we will explore a new case, the heartbreaking case of a beautiful woman, Julie Scully. Julie Marie Scully, an American woman, gave up everything to pursue love, but just a few months later, her body was found in a horrific state in a remote lake in Turkey. What turned her beautiful life into an international sensation case? Let's follow the case today. Julie was the daughter of Julia and John Scully. To understand her story better, let's consider her parents' situation. Julia was born in 1943 on an Indian reservation in New Mexico, home to the second-largest Native American tribe in the United States. Life on the reservation was extremely challenging, with no electricity or running water and limited job opportunities due to widespread alcoholism. Many residents turned to substance abuse as a coping mechanism. At the age of 12, Julia's parents sent her to a boarding school to help her learn English and adapt to life outside the reservation. After moving to the city, she began to fit in as an average American and found work at a mental health facility. However, she became addicted to substances. Later, Julia met a police officer named John. They got married just 2 days before the 1-year anniversary of their meeting. John took a job as a patrolman in one of the most dangerous areas of North Philadelphia. In January 1969, Julia became pregnant, and they welcomed their daughter, Julie. As Julie grew, she formed a very close bond with her father, and relatives noted that she would do anything to earn his approval. Father and daughter spent a lot of time together fishing, while Julia often felt sidelined in family life. During these times, she struggled with feelings of being an outsider. Although Julia hid her substance addiction, her erratic behavior raised concerns among those around her. Things worsened as Julia began to use more potent illegal additives. Despite this, on November 10, 1969, Julie's brother, John Patrick Scully, was born. The new baby quickly became the center of attention for their parents, leaving Julie feeling unloved and neglected. Meanwhile, Julia's substance abuse continued, and she fell into a deep depression. In 1973, overwhelmed, she took an entire pack of sleeping pills. Fortunately, John found her in time, administered first aid, and called for medical help. Julia was revived, but not only did the family learn of her addiction, the situation deteriorated further. She began to resemble a shell of her former self. Soon after, Julia attempted self-harm again due to depression, but this time, she also was saved. The issues between her parents did not go unnoticed by their children, especially by Julie, who was 9 years old at the time. During her birthday party, friends gathered to celebrate, but in the middle of the festivities, their father left to see his mistress. He had been having an affair for a while, viewing it as an escape from his growing disgust for his dependent wife. He stayed with Julia only for the sake of the children. During the party, the mistress arrived at their home to pick up John, and Julie saw her leaving with him. He seemed completely unconcerned that his secret was now obvious. This revelation hit Julie hard, and Julia began to blame herself for the situation. Julia struggled to understand what was really happening. During this time, Julie had once been an excellent student, started to fall to a C average in school. John then decided to transfer her to a new school in Kensington. In here, Julie, a bright and beautiful girl, became very popular, but also fell in with a bad crowd. She started skipping school, and her grades continued to decline. By this time, she was 12 years old and already looked attractive, attracting the attention of many boys. All this was aggravated by the fact that their family lived in a disadvantaged area, which made her parents increasingly afraid for Julie, fearing she could become a victim of the addiction. One evening, Julie's friends were supposed to spend the night, but when the mother came to check on them, the schoolgirls were not in the room. Concerned, Julia contacted emergency services, and the police eventually located them in downtown Philadelphia. Julie's relationship with her mother was deteriorating, resulting in frequent arguments. Her rebellious behavior also troubled her father. Julia entered treatment for her addiction. During Julia's absence, the home environment became more peaceful. However, despite Julie's early attempts to please her father, her rebellious nature intensified. She continued to skip classes and perform poorly academically due to spending more time with friends. When John learned of this, he was very upset. At the age of 14, Julie informed her father that she wanted to drop out of school. This decision likely stemmed from her feeling ignored by her parents. She was attractive and often the center of attention at parties, making her prioritize fun over her father's approval. By the age of 14, Julie had started living a sexual life. After graduating from high school, her parents began considering her future and special education needs. John helped her gain admission to a prestigious engineering school, known for its strict selection process. He personally spoke to the director to ensure she would be accepted without facing competition, emphasizing that she was the daughter of an indigenous person, which he hoped would earn her some concessions. In the fall of 1983, his efforts succeeded, and Julie enrolled in the engineering program. Meanwhile, her brother chose a different path. He joined the Navy as soon as he turned 16. During this time, Julie decided she was content with her life and dropped out of school to pursue financial independence. She began working and soon met a boyfriend. He was 6 years older than her. Their relationship progressed quickly, and they married in November 1985. 1985, just a few months before Julie turned 18. Although marrying provided her with financial support and emotional stability, their union was kept secret, even from her father. When John eventually found out, he supported the marriage, believing it was a better choice for Julie than living with a dependent parent. Unfortunately, the marriage ended in 1988, and Julie had to move back in with her mother. Despite finding a new job, she did not contribute to her mother's living expenses. Julie became more beautiful than ever, attracting attention every time she was in public. Many people even mistook her for a model and often asked if she was one. Over time, she started to leverage her beauty. Though she felt fragile and vulnerable inside, she was desperately searching for love, but only found brief connections. Many men invited her out on dates and to various events. This trend continued in July 1989, when she attended a stylish party at a yacht owners club. There, she met Timothy "Tim" Nist, a man 11 years her senior. He was a successful businessman who owned his own yacht. In the early 1980s, he started a landscape design company, and his business thrived during the boom of the U.S. real estate market. Julie and Tim's relationship progressed rapidly, but it soon became evident that Julie was very jealous. One day, when Tim was at a bar with another girl, Julie arrived and immediately hit him, leaving a bruise on his face. She also attacked the girl, who was actually Tim's longtime secretary and just an employee helping with the business. Although the situation was tense, the conflict was eventually resolved. Besides, Julie aspired to be a model and saw an advertisement for a beauty contest in a newspaper. Eager to participate, she and Tim gathered her best photos to submitted them to the magazine hosting the contest. Unfortunately, they later discovered that the contest was a scam. The magazine used fake ads to collect free photos for their men's section, which was on the last page. One day, Tim arrived at his office to find his secretary absent. To his surprise, Julie was sitting at her desk with a friendly smile, claiming that the secretary would no longer come to work and that Julie had taken over her job. This arrangement allowed Julie to work from home, giving her more freedom and financial independence. Meanwhile, she kept checking her email to see if another magazine had responded to the beauty pageant, but there was no response at all, which made her very frustrated. Eventually, feeling cheated out of her prize, she went to a magazine's office and confronted the editor, demanding an explanation for the lack of recognition for her supposed win. In the end, the editor accepted her photos and promised to include them in the next issue. Julie told everyone about what happened and began to prepare for the competition, which later took place in an elite hotel. At the contest, 12 finalists participated, including Julie. Unfortunately, the judges selected other contestants and only one person voted for her. Despite this setback, Julie formed a friendship with Cheryl Chouplas Hood, the magazine editor, and became this magazine's face, appearing on billboards throughout the city. This exposure increased her popularity, leading to numerous modeling job offers. Julie quickly gained fame, and her career flourished until the fall of 1990. She continued to work for SEMA while winning awards in smaller beauty contests. However, failures awaited her on the big podium. On November 16, 1991, Julie married Tim when she was 23 years old. They enjoyed a comfortable lifestyle and did not deny themselves anything until 1997. Julie's modeling career continued to grow, leading to more income and television appearances. However, she also began to struggle with alcohol abuse. Their marriage had its ups and downs, but overall, they shared love and understanding. Tim wanted children, and they had the financial means to support a family, but Julie was hesitant, fearing it might jeopardize her modeling career. In February 1995, she became pregnant. Despite her friends' concerns, she continued to drink and smoke during this time. On November 26, 1996, she gave birth to a daughter named Katie, which profoundly transformed her life, which Julie willingly accepted. During this time, Julia overcame her addictions and started to actively support her granddaughter. However, they frequently argued about parenting. Soon after, Julie began to struggle with postpartum depression, feeling unhappy because her pregnancy had affected her figure. She became withdrawn and didn't make an effort to return to her former self. Around the same time, her relationship with Tim started to deteriorate, especially in April of that year. They were compelled to see a family psychologist. Julie felt that the therapist favored Tim, but the therapist was actually trying to help her confront her issues and past traumas. Ultimately, the psychologist concluded that Tim was not spending enough time with Julie, putting their marriage at risk. Julie felt lonely and started reaching out to her friends. She came home intoxicated on November 1. This is the 7th year of Tim's annual cruise tradition, which they had maintained since their wedding. This year, they decided to move the trip up to celebrate the Christmas holidays. The cruise was intended to strengthen Julie and Tim's relationship. They left Katie with her grandparents and flew to San Juan, Puerto Rico, where they boarded a cruise ship. Almost immediately, a man named George Skiadopoulos, who worked in the ship's engineering department, noticed Julie. Although he held a low-ranking position, he introduced himself as the captain. The next day, he had made a bet with a friend that he could start a romantic relationship with Julie. At just 22 years old and fresh out of college, George was at the beginning of his engineering career, but he looked respectable enough for Julie to believe him. He falsely claimed to be 28 and fabricated a few accomplishments to impress her. At that time, Julie was 29 years old, and she quickly became close to George. Tim noticed their interactions but was accustomed to Julie being friendly with strangers, so he didn't think much of it and felt no jealousy. Before a party, George offered Julie a tour of the engine room. During the tour, they shared a kiss, but nothing more happened afterward. When Julie returned home, she excitedly told a family friend about her feelings, thinking it was just a brief attraction, since she believed she would never see George again. However, not long after, George sent Julie a seemingly innocent letter, and they began talking on the phone daily. He tried to persuade her that Tim wasn't good enough for her. These conversations were not hidden from Tim. He caught Julie a few times while she was on the phone, but chose to trust her without questioning what they discussed. This situation left Julie feeling conflicted. She was torn between the stability of the family and new sensations with a young lover whom she missed so much, which caused her to become more distant from her husband and daughter. Noticing the change in her behavior, Tim grew concerned and wanted to mend their relationship. On January 3, 1941, he planned a surprise birthday party for her 30th birthday. The celebration went well, with many friends attending. During the party, Julie requested another cruise as a gift, specifying a particular ship and date. Tim was unaware of her true intentions to meet George again. He agreed to her request. On February 13, Julie went on a cruise where she met George. After some intimate moments and returning home, Julie excitedly shared her experience with her friend Tony, who is also the godfather of Katie. Although he was trustworthy, it was hard for Tony to keep this secret to himself. Feeling a deep longing for George, Julie decided to visit him secretly. She framed the trip as a vacation with her mother and daughter. She revealed to her mother about her secret relationship, which led to disapproval. But this could not stop Julie. Initially, the plan was for Julie, Julia, and Katie to go to Florida together. However, by March 26, she left them behind and traveled to Puerto Rico, where she betrayed love of her husband. Upon returning, Julie began to communicate more openly with George. She would frequently talk to him on the phone, send flirty love letters via email, and even create a video sharing snippets of her life. All of this she did without hiding it from Tim, with whom she still lived. Using her husband's earnings, she started going to parties and drinking regularly. Tim noticed these changes and suggested that they see a family psychologist after 7 years of marriage. One day, Julie expressed her desire to break up with Tim, but he opposed the idea. She owned a share in Tim's business, which was generating about $1 million annually. Julie was in dire need of finances as George was planning military service, which in Greece lasts 20 months. She attempted to help George obtain a visa to the USA, but by that time, she could no longer afford it. Struggling with emotional issues, she started taking antidepressants, which made George very angry, and he forbade her from continuing the medication. To impress her new boyfriend, Julie decided to get in shape. However, she had trouble sleeping due to taking sleeping pills and other strong medications, which led her to lose about 10 kg. She hoped to return to modeling to earn money, but George was very jealous and opposed her pursuing this career. Consequently, Julie had to abandon her plans. No one supported her relationship with this Greek man, not even Cheryl, who had previously shown interest in her. In a separate incident, Tim was unable to access a project document. When Julie refused to let him into her room, he had to call the police for help. Despite her resistance, he retrieved what he needed for work. Julie became paranoid, believing that Tim had hired a detective to spy on her. The tension in their home escalated, and it seemed inevitable that they were heading toward a divorce. By midsummer, George and Julie secretly got engaged while they were in the United States. This was done secretly, although she didn't hide from anyone that she was going to move to Greece. During this time, Tim started receiving monthly bills of $67 for international phone calls. Eventually, he discovered that she had been unfaithful to him by an engineer from a cruise ship, and they had been communicating with him behind his back. This revelation made Tim furious, and he decided to expedite the divorce process to eliminate any complications. In response, Julie attempted to restrict Tim's communication with Katie. She aimed to gain full custody so she could leave for another country without any obstacles, which Tim strongly opposed. While they was trying to resolve their issues, Julie's lover George informed her that he had quit his job and planned to visit her in New Jersey. During this time, Julie was under significant stress due to ongoing conflicts with Tim, which even caused her hair to start falling out. However, she believed that all this was due to separation from her beloved. Additionally, she became increasingly paranoid and jealous, demanding constant communication and obsessing over other women in George's life. When George arrived in New Jersey, their relationship took on a more chaotic tone. He frequently asked Julie for money, pressuring her to spend more than she could afford. Because of this, she was forced to take money from Tim, while she completely limited him communication with their daughter. Tim went weeks without seeing her, which drove him to frustration. Meanwhile, George constantly deceived Julie about his financial situation and employment status. It was surprising how unattractive this man was, the beautiful Julie, who literally crouched before him and was ready to give up her well-established life for him. Julie's friends and family were puzzled by her behavior. They tried to convince her to rethink her feelings, as they couldn't comprehend why she would fall for a bald, unemployed man with rotten teeth who was manipulative, deceitful, and excessively jealous. Despite their concerns, Julie seemed infatuated with him. She planned to use her divorce settlement to pay for a professional hair transplant for her boyfriend and fix her own teeth. When Tim learned about her plans, he was outraged, especially since he felt Julie was involving Katie in this situation. He threatened that if she attempted to leave, he would take Katie away, and she would never see their child again. This threat likely dampened Julie's enthusiasm momentarily. She even told her friends that she had ended her relationship with George. However, this was only a temporary setback. A few weeks later, she went to Greece with George to further develop their relationship. During this time, Julie met the parents of George, and they enjoyed the weekend. Because of the religious views of the boyfriend's parents, Julie was forced to hide her marriage and her daughter, as well as her modeling past. When she returned home, she dreamed of a future with her lover. On December 1st, she planned to leave Tim and their shared home. That day, she also left Katie and checked into a hotel. After using a significant amount of psychoactive drugs, Julie traveled to Greece on December 8, 1998. While there, she and her partner made plans for marriage and their life together. George convinced her to open a joint bank account, claiming she needed help with the language barrier. In her infatuation, Julie deposited $80,000 into the account and left an additional $18,000 in cash for expenses. This was all the money she had, and then she vanished without a trace. On January 8, George called Julie's friend to report that she was missing. He said she was supposed to meet him near McDonald's for a snack but never arrived, despite him waiting for several hours. At that time, they didn't have mobile phones to reach her. After a lengthy search, George contacted the police to report his fiancée's disappearance. Shortly before these events, Julie called her friend to express how much she missed Katie and to share that she was having issues with her fiancé, George. The friend sensed that Julie was considering leaving George, and she thought that Julie would return to the US soon. However, Julie never came back. Amid this, George's call was concerning. He informed her friend that Julie had disappeared and left her passport in the car, which the police later took. The problem was that George couldn't locate the officer who had taken the document, making his story seem suspicious. In response, the friend contacted Tim, who was the only one who could provide assistance. Tim quickly understood that Julie was in trouble. The last time she had reached out to her family in the US was on January 7, and since then, no one had heard from her. Julie's mother described George as pathetic. Not only was he unattractive, but he also seemed to lack self-control. There was an incident where George became aggressive towards Julie, when during an argument with Julie, he yelled at her, grabbed her by the throat and pushed her against the wall. He only released her when he heard the threat of police involvement. At this time, Julie attempted to end the relationship. Following this, Julia called the police, and George was deported. But then, despite the circumstances, Julie traveled to Greece to support her boyfriend. She defended him in every way possible, even taking responsibility for the attack. When she learned that Julie was missing, Julia suspected that her daughter's boyfriend was involved in her disappearance. George pretended to help with the search for Julie. During this time, Julie's family tried to reach the American embassy in Athens, but they faced a significant language barrier since no one at the Greek police stations involved in the investigation spoke English. In the United States, the FBI became involved in the case. It was revealed that Julie's passport had been with George the entire time, although he claimed he found it later. When George learned that the FBI was now investigating, he changed his story and said that Julie's documents had been stolen. His behavior grew increasingly suspicious. He attempted to withdraw money from their joint account, but was unsuccessful. The couple was scheduled to get married on January 23, 1999. During this time, news outlets were covering the story of the missing American woman. George became agitated when he spoke on the phone with Julie's friend, who had alerted the media, George insisting he was innocent. He even gave statements to the press and participated in interviews to defend himself. 16 days later, George, the main suspect, was in the interrogation room. He continued to stick to the story he had shared with the media. However, after 4 hours of questioning, the police got him to confess to killing his lover. He claimed that it was an accident. George seemed to genuinely regret the incident, even shedding tears during the interrogation. Despite this, his account was filled with inconsistencies. At times, he insisted that Julie had not disappeared, only to later admit his guilt and then deny any involvement again. George explained that after moving to Greece, Julie quickly became unhappy and missed her home. She expressed a strong desire to return, and despite George's attempts to support her, her distress only deepened, which worried him. In the days leading up to her disappearance, Julie was constantly in tears. Furthermore, George's mother discovered that Julie had an ex-husband and a daughter in America, which made her feel disgusted with Julie. She openly expressed her disapproval to George. He was ultimately persuaded by his mother to leave Julie with such a complicated past. Their relationship was fraught with arguments, and they eventually were evicted from their hotel due to their conflicts. However, George exacerbated the situation. He prevented her from contacting her family and friends and physically abused her. It became evident that his mother struggled with schizophrenia and frequently required hospitalization. A lot of her issues seemed to have been passed down to George, who had an inflated sense of self-worth. As a result, he exhibited arrogant behavior. His manipulative tendencies were often noticed by friends and family. He disappeared at the slightest disagreement and immediately attacked his beloved. Besides, there was an incident where George's mother herself had a badly injured hand. But she justified herself by saying that she accidentally cut herself. Despite the abuse, Julie remained in the relationship. On January 8, 1999, the couple embarked on a long trip to Athens. As they drove along a deserted two-lane highway, their calm conversation spiraled into another argument. George eventually stopped in a remote area of the road where they were isolated from other drivers. George got out of the car and immediately attacked Julie, choking her in an attempt to silence her screams. George later told the police that it felt like he was watching the incident from outside his body. He felt completely powerless and couldn't stop until Julie showed no signs of life. Although he claimed the attack lasted only a few seconds, forensic experts indicated that strangulation typically takes at least 3 minutes. Afterward, George was in shock and contemplated burning her body and scattering the ashes into the sea from a cliff, intending to jump afterward to be with her. However, he ultimately abandoned this plan. Instead, he found himself in an interrogation room, which revealed his guilt. George claimed he had tried to take his own life using an air gun, jumping in front of a truck, and through an overdose of medication, but he was unsuccessful. Following the murder, he treated her body with indifference. He placed her in the trunk of his car and drove to the nearest gas station, where he purchased gasoline. He then returned to the scene, dragged her body away from the road near 2 small lakes, poured gasoline on her, and attempted to set her on fire. However, the fire didn't ignite because it started to rain. At one point, he thought about throwing her body into the lake, but instead placed the charred remains back in the trunk and drove to his grandmother's house. George discovered a large suitcase intended for travel and decided to pack the body inside it. By this time, rigor mortis had already set in, and the body would not bend. Additionally, the head would not fit into the suitcase, so George resorted to cutting it off. He grabbed the head by the hair and raised it to the level of his face, and later confessed to the police that he was horrified by the sight of her vacant eyes. Yet he still found her beautiful. He kissed her on the lips before placing the body into the suitcase. Afterward, he burned the suitcase and discarded it in a swamp, leaving the head behind. George then traveled to Kavala and threw Julie's head into the Aegean Sea. Tim and his family were informed of George's confession 19 days after Julie's disappearance. George, Julie's lover and intended husband, guided detectives to the murder site, where they discovered her remains. Tim traveled to Greece to bring her body back to her homeland. During this time, George confessed to the crime on live television. His mother suffered a stroke upon learning of his actions. Tim's father even remarked that George should have died alongside Julie. Despite this, many articles unfairly blamed Julie for the tragedy. Greek authorities described this murder as one of the most horrific cases known at the time. George's lawyers attempted to argue that he was insane, citing his mother's schizophrenia as a possible reason for his mental state. At one point, George expressed a desire for the death penalty, but Greece does not have capital punishment. In the United States, Tim became a source of support for Julie's family and friends. Despite Julie's infidelity, he proved to be a decent person. Friends of Julie, who remembered her fondly, believed that George initially exploited her for financial gain. When he found out that her husband was rich, he forced her to divorce for a tidy sum that the woman had to invest in his business. Before her death, Julie realized George's true intentions and decided not to invest in his projects, a decision that ultimately cost her life. George's trial began on November 27, 1999. Since 2009, cases in Greece have been heard by 3 judges instead of juries, which has expedited the justice process. Notably, no defense witnesses were present during the hearings. On December 6, the court found George guilty and sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Although it seemed that justice had been served, the Greek legal system faltered. In 2002, George appealed his conviction, claiming he was insane at the time of the murder. His sentence was subsequently reduced to 23 years, and he was granted the right to appeal again. By 2007, he was released and now lives with his new family in Kavala. The case of Julie Scully is a heartbreaking tragedy, with haunting details of the complex relationship. From a happy marriage, she began an affair with George Skiadopoulos, which led to irreparable arguments and conflicts that eventually led to her death. The case is not only a story of personal loss, but also a reflection of the complex elements of love, trust, and power in relationships. The media and public continue to investigate to clarify what really happened, but the story of Julie will forever be a painful reminder of the tragic consequences of toxic relationships.